Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 3721, Initiate Zen into Cultivation. The human heroes all looked at Dale with concern. Yes, Dale replied with a nod. He's still alive. The human heroes were stunned at this revelation. The primeval Lord of Heaven let out a sigh of relief. It was the answer he was hoping for. It was like a thorn was just pulled from him. This meant the human race in the 77th chaos did not really fall into decline. After all, the human heroes led by the primeval Lord of Heaven survived to this day, and now, they had found that so had the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. The Grand Master of Heaven was also doing fine, although he was now on the opposing side. The survival of the three fellow disciples was nothing short of a miracle. So where is he? Why did he disappear after entering the Jade Pure Realm? The primeval Lord of Heaven pressed. It's a long story. After entering the Jade Pure Realm, we ran into some trouble. Dale then launched into the story of what happened to their party a long time ago. We had been hiding in the bubbles all this time to evade the Snake Spirit King. It was near impossible to leave, but I took a huge risk to come here. What was so urgent that you had to come here, then? The Snake Goddess asked curiously. Dale's gaze swept through the human heroes. Apparently not finding who he was looking for, he turned his attention back to the Snake Goddess. I'm here for Zen. The primeval Lord of Heaven, the Snake Goddess and the others all shot each other a knowing look. Dale didn't need to say anything more. They were sharp enough to know what he came here for. Zen had displayed exceptional abilities since he had entered the Creation Myth Temple. The primeval Lord of Heaven and the Snake Goddess also knew from having entered Zen's inner world as energy souls that it was a primitive land. From there, Zen had evolved more and more until he finally obtained the ancestry-level bloodline. This growth was extraordinary and could not be attributed to mere luck. The primeval Lord of Heaven and the Snake Goddess were thus able to deduce that Zen had an extremely powerful backer. But that only left them more confused. Even the Monkey Spirit King wouldn't be able to orchestrate such a feat. Who could possibly be so powerful that they could enable Zen to fuse with the ancestry-level bloodline? It was beyond imagining. All this time, none of them could figure it out. So it was my senior fellow disciple all along. The primeval Lord of Heaven mused aloud with a quizzical look. He respected the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord very much, but if he was the one behind Zen, it would be somewhat of a blow to his ego. It would imply the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord was far more advanced than him now. That is correct. In fact, the grand weapon refining method that Zen cultivated was given by my master, Dale answered. The grand weapon refining method, the primeval Lord of Heaven muttered, with some bitterness in his voice. His thurgies must be far beyond my reach now. The Snake Goddess pursed her lips. She had always wondered where the grand weapon refining method had come from, but Zen hadn't known either when she had asked him. She would never have thought it was related to the long-missing Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. But my master is not as powerful as you think, said Dale with a smile. The grand weapon refining method was not a thurgy he created. It was given by a human spirit. Given, the primeval Lord of Heaven's white eyebrows shot up. How about the ancestry-level bloodline? That's because of the grand weapon refining method, Dale answered. Do you have any way to control it? The primeval Lord of Heaven asked. Zen had already mastered the blood-controlling method, but he hadn't been able to fully control the ancestry-level bloodline yet. That's precisely why I'm here, Dale said. Can you summon Zen to the other shore? The primeval Lord of Heaven nodded and took out the descending ring. The pear hill had been floating in the chaos for a few days. It hadn't moved around too much. But to the hundreds of millions of creatures occupying the mountain, their world had been upended. They were still reeling from losing the support of the source world, although the drifting chaotic energy was blocked by the enchanted barrier and most of them wouldn't have left Pear Hill anyway. The Snake Goddess had ordered all the large cities in the west of the mountain to move to the east. The relocation was completed in just a few days. Streaks of purple energy now flowed around the stones on the west mountainside. When the energy touched the stones, they would turn into golden iron or silver steel, constantly changing shapes. It was the truth power of the Chaos Ancient God Judson. The pair Hill had left in a hurry, driven only by the power of the three Chaos Ancient Gods. There had been no change to its speed since then. Judson's truth power could create and reshape materials at will. He was currently trying to turn Pear Hill into a giant ship so that it could travel in the vast chaos. Standing at the western mountainside, Zen looked at the transformation and thought of the divine land. He had been in the source world for so many years. He had no idea where the divine land was now. Once the ship was completed, Zen had planned to request the snake goddess to have him piloted in search of the divine land. Zen was lost in these thoughts when the space around him suddenly started rippling. Fuxi promptly appeared in front of him. The primeval Lord of Heaven summons you to the other shore. Zen nodded and sat down to recite the truth of eternal sword intent, transporting him in the blink of an eye. Primeval Lord of Heaven, Zen greeted as he arrived, bowing slightly and cupping his hands. The primeval Lord of Heaven smiled warmly in response. We have some good news. We have found the answer to your long-standing question of where the grand weapon refining method came from. Zen raised his eyebrows. At this moment, he spotted the stranger in a cyan robe not far away. Bromley had obtained the grand weapon refining method in the chaos, but even he had never been convinced it was entirely coincidental. After all, the probability of picking up a palm-sized golden page in that vast space was infinitesimally small. Who are you? Zen asked the stranger. My name is Dale, Dale said, bowing slightly and cupping his hands in reverence. I came here under orders of my master to initiate you into cultivation. Initiate, Zen repeated in confusion. He had been cultivating for many years, working so hard that he had finally reached the eternal realm. Wasn't he long past the initiation stage? The primeval Lord of Heaven and the others were likewise puzzled by Dale's statement. But Dale held firm. Yes, initiate. May I enter your inner world to have a look? Zen glanced at the primeval Lord of Heaven. He nodded encouragingly. Zen then created an avatar in his inner world, and also placed the souls of the primeval Lord of Heaven, the snake goddess and Dale into his inner world. Zen's inner world had developed quite well. Everything appeared to be running in an orderly manner, due in part to the efforts of the souls of the human heroes. But Dale took one look and let out a long sigh. My master was right. This primitive land is just desolate. Chapter 3722, A Conjecture. Dale's words displeased the primeval Lord of Heaven. He was annoyed at what the former thought. The human hero's energy souls had stayed inside Zen's inner world before. Once there, they had spent a lot of time and energy in making it a better place. Compared to the inner worlds of other people, Zen's inner world could easily be marked as one of the best. But Dale was saying that it was a desolate place, and the primeval Lord of Heaven felt humiliated. Ahem. The primeval Lord of Heaven tried to hide his anger with a cough and then asked, Dale, this inner world is built according to the human race's heaven and earth separation method. What's more, the world runs remarkably well considering its complexity. Why are you saying that it is a desolate place? Dale glanced at the primeval Lord of Heaven and then explained with a smile, it is true that the heaven and earth separation method is the best way to build the inner worlds of ordinary warriors. However, that is not valid here. This is the primitive land. Even if the world runs so well, it's of no use here. It's too small. Once again, Zen's inner world was not small, especially when compared to those of ordinary warriors. One could even say that it was remarkably larger than people usually thought possible. Dale, however, was coming up with these comments because he was judging that world by the standards of the primitive land. Compared to the source world, Zen's inner world was easily as tiny as a dust particle. This time, the primeval Lord of Heaven did not refute his statement. Instead, he asked, do you know a way to expand his inner world? After the primeval Lord of Heaven's soul fragment had entered Zen's inner world, he had also tried his best to expand it, but had been unsuccessful. Theoretically, it had the potential to grow infinitely. In fact, when the source world was born, it wasn't as huge as its contemporary presence. It had slowly expanded over time by devouring the chaotic energy. But the primeval Lord of Heaven had been unsuccessful because, to be honest, he didn't know much about the primitive land, and therefore couldn't find a way to expand it. In the end, he had been left with no choice but to treat the primitive land as an ordinary inner world. Of course. Dale nodded. I know a way, which is also the key to controlling the ancestry-level bloodline. Once warriors reached the other shore realm, then the inner worlds became less important. The biggest function of these inner worlds was to carry the objects their owners had obtained from the other shore. In fact, the chaotic source realm and the holy soul realm were merely enhanced realms on the other shore realm. The real change happened when one entered the eternal realm. At that point, their inner world became almost completely insignificant. It was true that the bloodline inherited from the eternal scroll painting could affect the inner world. For example, Fuxi had created huge 8 diagrams in his inner world. The snake goddess shadows were flying around everywhere in her inner world. The inner world could also store a portion of the bloodline power. However, the capacity was limited. The amount of bloodline power that could be stored was less than 1/10 of the cultivator's own power. That could be easily overlooked. What should I do? Zen asked in a confused tone. Judging by what Dale was saying, it looked like he had completely ignored the real function of his inner world. He was omniscient in his inner world, but that omniscience did not reach outside. And expanding his own inner world was beyond Zen's talents and knowledge. Direct the ancestry-level bloodline into your inner world, and this will allow you to create a world of blood and flesh, said Dale. Zen, the primeval lord of heaven, and the snake goddess looked at each other with a confused expression on their faces. They couldn't understand what Dale was saying. How was he supposed to create a world of flesh and blood? That is what that human spirit told us, Dale continued explaining. However, my master told me that the human spirit was not fully confident of its success. It is only a conjecture that the ancestry-level bloodline can be controlled in the primitive land. And now, Zen has a chance to verify this conjecture. Dale's proposal was interesting. The domain Zen had got his hands on was something that the Four Spirits sect had never reached, or perhaps even heard of. The advantage was that he might obtain power that even the human spirit king, the monkey spirit king, the bird spirit king, or the snake spirit king could never catch up with. However, the flip side was that no one knew what he should do next. His only way forward was to explore the unknown bit by bit. Even the human spirit had only pointed out a possibility. So you are not going to teach him the cultivation method of the ancestry-level bloodline? The snake goddess curled her lips. Her expectations had been raised after hearing the possibilities a few moments ago, but now Dale was telling them it was all just a conjecture. Was he kidding? There is no cultivation method. Dale shook his head. The primeval Lord of Heaven still did not seem discouraged. Instead, he suddenly asked, that human spirit you're talking about. Is his surname Shui? Dale's eyes opened wide in shock. How did you know? No matter how powerful the primeval Lord of Heaven was, it was impossible for him to guess that human spirit's surname. Some secrets were way too hidden even for people like him to find out. But he had. Not only that, Zen's and the snake goddess's eyes also flickered. Then the snake goddess piped up, if our guess is right, then the human spirit should be Elder Shui from the Bold Conjecture House. When they had looked through the stone tablets of the monkey spirit sect, they had found a few clues about the ancestry-level bloodline. In addition to Kincaid, who was the human spirit king, another highly important name that they had come across was of Elder Shui. In order to find a way to merge with the ancestry-level bloodline, Elder Shui had gone to the deep space. And no news had been heard of or from him ever since. When the primeval Lord of Heaven had heard the word, conjecture, the name had crossed his mind immediately and he'd just blurted it out without too much thought. He never could have expected that he would end up being right. Elder Shui's achievements with regards to the ancestry-level bloodline should not be considered inferior to that of the human spirit king. Moreover, he had gone to the deep space and chances are, he might have gained something whilst he was there, the primeval Lord of Heaven replied with a smile. Although I don't know much about the main world, judging by what the records on those stone tablets say, I also came up with a few conclusions. Since the ancestry-level bloodline is from the deep space, a way to control it is likely to be found there as well. That makes Elder Shui the most likely one to find it. I can give what you said a shot, Zen piped up. Previously, he had been unable to activate ancestry-level bloodline at will. But after cultivating the blood-controlling method, it was not a difficult task for him. As soon as he finished speaking, his avatar sat down cross-legged and floated up into the air inside his inner world. To be honest, he still had some doubts in his heart. Although the blood-controlling method allowed him to activate the ancestry-level bloodline, it only allowed the simplest usage of the bloodline. Furthermore, it was unable to provide him with a means to divide the ancestry-level bloodline. Once a portion of the ancestry-level bloodline was forced into his inner world, it would definitely cause some backlash. He had to be ready for that. There were risks, but Zen also knew that often, a mere thought, word, or idea that ordinary people couldn't even imagine coming up with, could work wonders. The moment the first drop of the ancestry-level bloodline was injected into his inner world, Zen's body began to tremble violently. His entire body turned as white as paper all of a sudden, and all trace of blood vanished from every single part of his body. Even his eyes, ears, nose and mouth were drained of color. The ancestry-level bloodline couldn't wait to leave Zen's physical body and madly rushed into his inner world. Once Zen's meridians were completely dried up, his life force quickly faded away, as if he was about to die. Out of the blue, Zen's real body and his avatar in his inner world fell down with a flop. His body seemed cold now. When the snake goddess saw this scene, her expression changed. She quickly withdrew her soul fragment from Zen's inner world. She couldn't let Zen die. With a gentle wave of her hand, a green leaf appeared in the center of her palm. She grabbed Zen's jaw and forcefully stuffed the leaf into his mouth. This leaf was known as the heavenly immortal leaf, and it contained an enormous amount of life energy. Once Zen had absorbed enough life energy, his face turned red once again, and the blood in his body began to flow once more. However, the blood flowing in his meridians was no longer the ancestry-level bloodline. The ancestry-level bloodline was now inside his inner world and floating around like a free child. It suddenly turned into a huge mass of blood mist and spread out in all directions at an astonishing rate, enveloping his entire inner world like radiation. A gust of wind blew, and a fishy and sweet smell spread throughout every corner of his inner world. Chapter 3723, A New Flesh World. After the evil god had left Zen, his inner world grew and prospered. The primeval Lord of Heaven implemented new rules to unite several human forces. All sorts of new forces flourished like sprouting bamboo shoots. For most of the inner worlds, the more people and races there were, the more wars they would inevitably have. However, the new forces in Zen's inner world lived together in harmony, rarely entertaining any conflicts. Now blood mist spread across the sky as its stench filled the entire inner world. The people were once again alarmed. This blood is a threatening sign. What's happening to our world? Is a disaster approaching us? As the people saw the blood mist covering the horizon, they were filled with indescribable agony. They were facing imminent danger, but where could they escape? Splash, splash. The blood mist formed from the ancestry-level bloodline spread to the edge of the inner world. It flowed to a tide merging with the chaotic sea. From dark brown, the chaotic sea gradually changed into a bright red. Master Dale, what does the ancestry-level bloodline want? Zen asked worriedly. He knew that the ancestry-level bloodline had its consciousness and was never under his control. Even the blood-controlling method only allowed him to have an elementary control. Now the ancestry-level bloodline was like a wild runaway horse galloping through his inner world. This made him nervous. How would I know? Answered Dale. Zen and the primeval Lord of Heaven glared at him as if they wanted to swallow him alive. Dale couldn't stand their ferocious stares and hurriedly said, "Didn't I say a world of blood and flesh would be built?" The primeval Lord of Heaven looked at the sea of blood and nodded. The inner worlds are filled with all sorts of strange things, but I'm afraid that only Zen's inner world has such a scene. After a few moments, Zen, the primeval Lord of Heaven, and Dale finally understood what the world of blood and flesh pertained to. As the chaotic sea transformed into blood, several continents began to shake and rumble. They rose as flesh-like substances appeared from beneath them. Thump, 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 the flesh pulsated, producing new growth that quickly connected to the thick continents. While the people in Zen's inner world panicked, blood-red flesh popped out from the ground. It grew into a flesh tree in the blink of an eye, with suckers crawling on its surface. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. These suckers could reach several hundred feet and into humans' bodies. Whoever was sucked would be stripped of flesh and blood, leaving an obliterated body. Tens of millions of flesh trees bloomed on the continents, warning to suck all the creatures in the inner world. Run! Everyone fled frantically. The continents were swarmed with flesh trees with no way to escape. Zen could allow the ancestry-level bloodline to transform his inner world, but he would never let it kill the creatures in such a cruel way. He frowned and stretched out a hand as he tried to grab and raise it. Rumble. The continents began to float under Zen's power. The flesh trees grew from the flesh substances at the bottom of the continents. They couldn't be severed from those flesh substances. As the continents floated, the flesh trees were forcefully torn from the continents. Zen, your inner world will undergo a tremendous change. There's no need to pity these lives. Dale felt that Zen was being too kind. Once Zen's inner world expanded, it would be multiple times larger and the creatures within it would also be much more powerful. Zen was like a rich man who possessed a beggar's attitude, knowing how to cherish even just a handful of rice. No matter what change could happen, I don't want them to be devoured. They are all living beings, Zen said with utmost concern. He had developed his inner world carefully. The people inside were all created by him. They lived with their spouses and children, experienced joys and sorrows, and dealt with reunions and separations. Zen wouldn't let them all be killed by the ancestry-level bloodline. As the continents drifted in the air, the people were able to escape death. Only the creator of this world could do that. Those people knew that it was Zen who had saved their lives, so they all fell in worship with their heads toward the ground. Although Zen hadn't appeared for a long time, the legend about him spread widely in this world. "This is boring," Dale remarked as he shook his head. But it was not that he felt heartless about what took place. The things involved in the primitive land were too significant. He didn't like Zen to interfere with them using his strength. However, there was really no way for Dale to change Zen's mind. He was the master of this world. After the continents were lifted, more flesh substances formed at the bottom of the world. As the number of flesh substances increased, the area of the Blood Sea began to rapidly decrease. Not long after, the Blood Sea had disappeared completely and the entire inner world was covered by the flesh substances. Thump, 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 the flesh contracted like thousands of hearts beating simultaneously at the same speed. The ancestry-level bloodline ceased taking further action as the inner world reached this point. "Is it over?" Zen's avatar descended from the sky and stepped on one of the pieces of flesh. He had been omniscient within his inner world and there was nothing hidden from him. Yet he knew nothing about the flesh substances. When he tried to sense them, a resistance force radiated from them. The primeval Lord of Heaven and Dale also descended. "I don't think so. The most critical thing hasn't happened yet," Dale said. "Do you mean expansion?" the primeval Lord of Heaven asked. "Yes," Dale replied with a nod. For a primitive land, expansion was the priority. Zen's inner world was far too small. "Will the world expand relying on these flesh substances?" Zen questioned Dale. Dale didn't answer. He didn't know the answer either, but looking at the vast mass of flesh substances, he felt that the world ought to expand next. Thump, 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 all the flesh substances began to beat faster. They appeared to be growing, squeezing onto each other more and more fiercely. 5 minutes later, Zen suddenly felt a crushing intense pain. It throbbed non-stop as if giving him a signal of his cinnabar field close to shattering. Chapter 3724, Rebuilding. The expansion of his cinnabar field caused some pain. When it expanded, so did his inner world. But naturally, the scale of their expansion differed. His cinnabar field had only expanded half a finger's distance, while his inner world had expanded beyond 1,000 miles. The next second, his cinnabar field began shrinking. But his inner world did not follow, it only stopped expanding. Following that, while his cinnabar field continued to expand, his inner world expanded over 1,000 miles. Swoosh, 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 Zen's body seemed to have entered a subtle state. With every second, his inner world was expanding 1,000 miles. The snake goddess, who guarded Zen from outside, took notice of his wondrous state. She then transformed into a strand of soul and drilled into his inner world, her clear eyes widened in surprise at the sight before her. Previously, the continents occupied nearly 70% of space within Zen's inner world. But now, all the continents floated in the sky, occupying less than 10% of the inner world. The primitive land had expanded so fast, the expansion not ceasing in the least. Each time Zen's inner world expanded, some of the flesh substances at the bottom of the world disappeared, turning into blood-red meridians that extended toward the edge of the inner world. Both Dale and the primeval Lord of Heaven had already understood that the expansion of Zen's inner world was based on the flesh substances. "The expansion of about 1,000 miles will consume over 100 masses of flesh," remarked the primeval Lord of Heaven. "To be exact, 103 masses of flesh," Zen said in return. "And the expansion will extend for 1,200 miles, to be exact. There are a total of 14 million masses of flesh in my inner world." At that number, the snake goddess' eyes widened. How vast will Zen's inner world be? It will be an inner world with a diameter of over 100 million miles. It must be countless times larger than it is now, but it's still far smaller than the source world, Dale answered with a smile. "At this rate, it will probably take several months to completely consume all of the flesh," remarked the primeval Lord of Heaven. Zen had also realized that the rate of expansion was rather slow. "It shouldn't have to take so long," he chimed in. Gently turning his hand, he made a burning joss stick appear in his grip, emitting a curling fragrance. Buzz. Simultaneously, a strange light enveloped him, the primeval Lord of Heaven, the snake goddess, and Dale, along with the continents and the fairy palace above. Once Zen changed the time flow rate of his inner world, everything began advancing rapidly. The flesh substances disappeared in an instant as his inner world continued rapidly expanding. When the joss stick in Zen's hand was completely burnt, the flesh substances beneath their feet finally disappeared, which were then replaced by a broad space. Its bottom was made up of meridians that were tens of millions of miles long. Compared to such a space, the continents floating in the sky served as tiny building blocks. The world is so empty, Zen said. Zen has to create more lives. The primeval Lord of Heaven asked. I don't know, Dale said in return, scratching his head. Quote. Once again, the other three stared at him with fierce eyes. There was nothing Dale could do but deliver his master's message. Let me try to build the world. With Zen's omniscient power, building a creature-filled world was an easy feat. Seawater was important to the inhabitants. He wanted to first fill his empty world with seawater. In the past, he had already done it twice. The first time was when he formed his soul sea, and the second was when the chaotic sea was created. Now, it was the third time. But just as he was going to exercise his omnipotent power, his body stiffened slightly, stunned. At that moment, the power that ruled everything in his inner world had disappeared. For several times, Zen tried waving his arms, getting flustered. I'm not the master of this world. Everyone was supposed to be omniscient in their own inner worlds with everything under their control. Space, earth, water, time, and lives were no exception. Such was the most basic rule of the grand world cultivation method. Now, the invasion of the ancestry-level bloodline rendered Zen's omniscient power ineffective. He couldn't help but feel flustered. Strictly speaking, this world is constructed by the ancestry-level bloodline. It may not be obedient to you right now, said the snake goddess, pointing at the blood mist that had spread across the sky. The ancestry-level bloodline has once deprived you of control over your body. This can't be worse than that, remarked the primeval Lord of Heaven. Zen shrugged helplessly. You're right. As for how to deal with the huge inner world, all they could do was wait and see. But at this very moment, the meridians at the bottom of the world began trembling as a white mist gushed out. The moment it appeared, Zen's and the primeval Lord of Heaven's expressions shifted slightly. The two felt the aura of the bloodline power simultaneously. This is Gongong's bloodline power. Even the snake goddess noticed it. No, the primeval Lord of Heaven shook his head. His bloodline power is purer, but the aura in the white mist is far more complicated. In addition to the 7 abilities in the creation quadrant, there are also 4 other abilities in the life quadrant, Zen said. As he obtained the ancestry-level bloodline, he managed to analyze the nature of any kind of energy. Such an analytic ability was given by the ancestry-level bloodline. Later on, it took the ability back. But for some reason, in his inner world, Zen had regained the analytic ability. Whoosh, 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 boundless white mist covered the world. It continued piling up and rising slowly, approaching Zen and the rest. As the white mist rose into the sky, it shifted into clouds. Once they were thick enough, they would form a heavy rain. Splash! It began to rain in the inner world. This time, a real sea was finally formed within Zen's body, replacing the former chaotic sea. Crack, crack, a bolt of lightning shot out from the blood mist, streaking through the sky and sinking right into the sea. The lightning contains the 16 abilities of the destruction quadrant, Zen remarked in astonishment. Rumble, high mountains in the sea rose continuously, containing 2 abilities of the creation quadrant. Suddenly, one of the mountains split apart, allowing lava to flow from it. The lava seemed to be emitting the aura of the bloodline power as well. Enlightenment then struck Zen at that moment. The power of the ancestry-level bloodline was everywhere in this newly constructed inner world. If the inner world was completed, wouldn't it be easy for him to obtain the power within? Chapter 3725, The Only Shelter. As things escalated to this point, realization dawned on the faces of Dale, the snake goddess, and the primeval Lord of Heaven as well. It turned out that Zen had cultivated the Soul Sea realm anew. Once a warrior had reached the Soul Sea realm, their life vitality became liquefied and formed a Soul Sea. Afterward, the sea of life vitality in their inner world would regularly provide life vitality for the warrior. After all, even if one had mastered the godly ways, they still used the life vitality in essence. Currently, the power Zen had used to reconstruct his inner world directly came from the ancestry-level bloodline. The difference was self-evident. For instance, the world created by using life vitality was secondary in one's body. On the other hand, the world created by using chaotic energy was chaos. Therefore, was the world created using the ancestry-level bloodline the abstruse energy world? The primeval Lord of Heaven's heart skipped a beat at the thought, and he quietly glanced at Dale beside him. Dale acted like he was only a messenger and didn't know anything else, but was that really the case? However, the primeval Lord of Heaven had no idea what time and space in the abstruse energy world were like. The creation of the world before his eyes was still fresh in his mind, which contradicted his assumption. Thus, he ignored his confusion and did not say anything. Meanwhile, Zen's inner world evolved at an even faster speed. Earth continued to emerge from the sea, and volcanoes erupted destructive hot lava. The seawater extinguished the lava that came to destroy everything, then an area in the shape of a coiled snake was formed. Lastly, life began to take shape in the place. It was a kind of bright green seaweed, and everyone was sure those were just plants. Yet, the thumb-sized plants quickly grew wings that were as thin as a cicada's and flew away. Then, hundreds of millions of those seaweed creatures flew up the sky towards the continents that Zen had created before. From afar, the mass of seaweed creatures looked like an enormous green hurricane. What do they want to do? The snake goddess said worriedly. Let's go and have a look. Zen said seriously. Since he had lost the ability to know everything in his inner world, he could not move freely as before. He could not appear anywhere in his inner world with just a thought like he previously did. Fortunately, the restrictive force of the space law in this world was not strong, so they could still teleport at will. A few moments later, Zen, the snake goddess, the primeval lord of heaven, and Dale arrived at the edge of the continents. The green seaweed creatures swarmed the continents, then attacked the creatures that lived there. Although the seaweed creatures were small, they were highly poisonous. All the creatures that they touched died in an instant. These green seaweeds, they are attacking the world I created. Zen's face darkened at the sight of the seaweed creatures that swarmed the continents like locusts. He had painstakingly built and developed these continents, and he would never allow anyone to destroy them, especially when his inner world had just gotten rebuilt. How could he allow these seaweed creatures to slaughter the living beings that lived on them? We have to stop these seaweeds. Zen shouted. As he had lost the almighty power in his inner world, it was not easy to remove all of the green seaweeds. Only the other three who tagged along could help him. Clean them up. I'll activate the enchanted barrier. These seaweed creatures are quite weak, and they only came in large numbers. It's not a big deal to finish them. When the snake goddess, the primeval lord of heaven, and Dale were about to make a move, Zen suddenly waved his hands and said, "No need. Let me deal with them." Then, he gently raised his hand. A strong gust of wind blew across the continents, which stirred the endless sand into the air. Kill them all. With a wave of his hand, the sand in the sky changed course and flew towards the seaweed creatures. Each grain of sand pierced through a seaweed creature, and not long after, the numerous grains of sand had silently punctured millions of seaweed creatures. Only the master of the inner world could perform such a precise attack. When Zen returned to the continents, he found his omniscient abilities had recovered. Not long after, the sand had completely wiped out all the seaweeds that surrounded the continents. However, their relief was short-lived. The seaweeds kept emerging from the seawater and swarmed the continents again. Furthermore, the number of seaweed now multiplied up to 100 times more than that of the previous batch. No matter what reason you have to attack my world, if you don't stop, I will never forgive you. Zen screamed as he looked up at the sky in despair. In many cases, he was no match for the ancestry-level bloodline. But now that he had regained his omniscient and omnipotent powers, he could now compete against it. Once he finished speaking, a faint sound came from the red mist that shrouded the sky. He listened carefully and vaguely heard a burst of laughter, like a group of cats screaming in the middle of the night. Soon enough, the strange screams disappeared, and the seaweed creatures seemed to have lost their souls. They all fell into the sea, and the primitive land stopped attacking. It appears that it will take some time for us to coexist with each other peacefully, Zen said in a solemn voice. It was true that he was still the master of this world, but his authority was only limited to these continents. Your situation now is out of the ordinary. You can only explore slowly by yourself, but in the end, you should be able to find a way to coexist with the ancestry-level bloodline, the primeval lord of heaven assured him. As for Dale, he glanced at the boundless ocean and thought for a moment. The primitive land has now expanded to this size. Zen, can you check the area outside the primitive land? He asked. The area outside the primitive land. Zen arched his eyebrows and said, "Everyone, please follow me." He then created another avatar in his inner world to prevent the ancestry-level bloodline from attacking the continents again. There was an avatar that guarded the place, and another avatar followed the other three to the edge of the primitive land. There was a time when over 1,000 Sanskrit words bounded his inner world, but those had disappeared and were replaced by walls, woven from the meridians. If one looked closer, they would see the blood that rapidly flowed within the walls. The chaos should be outside the wall, Dale confirmed. Well, that's a problem. How can we observe the outside world then? The snake goddess asked. Zen, try to communicate with the ancestry-level bloodline again and ask it to let us out, the primeval Lord of Heaven suggested. Before he could finish speaking, Zen snorted coldly and placed his palms on the wall. He felt the wall's temperature. Then, without saying anything, he clawed at the wall and tore it down, which caused a huge crack. As a result, the chaotic energy surged and flowed straight into the crack. Upon seeing his reckless behavior, Dale, the primeval Lord of Heaven, and the snake goddess all smiled helplessly. The primitive land and its master did not have a harmonious relationship. Most areas in the chaos were even empty and were devoid of life. Nevertheless, they went out through the crack and looked around. There was still nothing else in sight, except for the slowly drifting chaos clouds. Zen, can you sense the location of the primitive land? Asked Dale. Zen shook his head, and replied, no. When his inner world had just been built, he could sense its location, but after that, he could not locate it anymore. You have to find a way to locate it. The primitive land will be your only shelter, Dale said in a deathly serious tone. Chapter 3726, Dale's News. The chaos was an immensely vast space, so it was naturally hard to find a specific target or location within it. The snake goddess tilted her head and thought for a while. After a few moments, she said, bring me to Pear Hill. I have another shore token that can determine the location. The primeval Lord of Heaven looked at her curiously. He did not know that she had such another shore token. I have a set of mother-child butterflies, a mother and 3 children. They can determine each other's positions, no matter how far they are from each other, she explained. She had obtained her set of mother-child butterflies quite a long time ago, so the primeval Lord of Heaven had forgotten about it. Thank you so much, said Zen. After he had dissolved his avatar, he woke up in the Night View Island. Meanwhile, the primeval Lord of Heaven handed the descending ring over to the snake goddess. Then, he chanted the illusion-breaking rune. He asked Fuxi, who was in Pear Hill, to summon the real snake goddess. When the real snake goddess had descended, she looked at the vast expanse of Pear Hill with curiosity. After all, her avatar was the one who created this super force and was also the only fruit left by the many seeds they had sowed. As soon as she finished observing, she stretched out her hand and flicked gently. 1 large and 3 small butterflies appeared beside her. The 4 beautiful butterflies were all in cyan color, and they danced gingerly around her. Zen, keep the mother butterfly and put it in Pear Hill. Put the other 3 small butterflies outside your primitive land. This way, they can sense each other, the real snake goddess ordered. In turn, Zen did as she directed. After he put the mother butterfly away, he placed the 3 small ones inside his inner world, and his avatar brought one of them to the edge of the primitive land. As for Dale and the primeval Lord of Heaven, they still waited in the chaos. After Zen went out, he released one of the small butterflies. The small animal flew around for a bit, then it stopped on the outer wall of the primitive land, and stayed still. Dale looked at the butterfly and asked, Zen, can you determine the location of the divine land? The location of the divine land? I don't think I can. Zen shook his head. If the distance was close, then he could sense the location of the divine land. Unfortunately, he was too far from it. Furthermore, the divine land was a ship that was still moving. Of course, it was quite hard for him to find it. Wait, why did you mention the divine land? You know the divine land? He suddenly felt quite confused. Logically speaking, Dale could not know the existence of the divine land. Give me one of the small butterflies, Dale said as he stretched out his hand towards Zen. Zen gave Dale a strange look, then handed him a small butterfly. Can you find the divine land with this? He asked. I can find the ruin graveyard, and I can let someone in the ruin graveyard carry this butterfly as another shore token, Dale answered with a smile. The ruin graveyard, what does it have to do with the divine land? At that point, Zen felt extremely uneasy. He had heard of the ruin graveyard when he was passing through the space cave after leaving the divine land. However, he had never left the source world, so he did not know much about it. Not long after you left, the divine land became part of the ruin graveyard. We built the ruin graveyard, Dale replied. Zen's eyes flashed. You built the ruin graveyard? He asked in disbelief. Yes, Dale said with a nod, then added, if the end has come and you haven't developed the primitive land enough, we will activate the ruin graveyard. It will be our last resort. After all, the ruin graveyard is not the real primitive land. Is the divine land safe now? Zen asked eagerly. After he had left for so long, he had thought about everything in the divine land. A smile graced Dale's face. Although the ruin graveyard is notorious, it's not what the outside world thinks. It's just that everyone inside cannot come out. Your master, Bromley, has been staying there, so he could not return to the divine land. My master. Once again, Zen's eyes widened in surprise. Before Mike, his father, had left the divine land, he asked him to search every place in the divine land to find Bromley. He had searched for some time as Mike had requested, but to no avail. He did not expect that Bromley was in the ruin graveyard. Satisfied with the effect of his words, Dale continued, many of the consummate true gods in the divine land have reached the other shore realm. Especially Rocher, who considered you as his opponent, is now at the 32nd stage of the other shore realm. How is that possible? Now, Zen was even more shocked, but he quickly shook his head and looked at Dale suspiciously. After the change on the other shore, how did ordinary people enter stage 32? Moreover, why did we not know that the people from the divine land had entered the other shore? It was quite hard to reach the other shore realm outside the source world. Also, it was not easy to cross the energy vortex between the lust world and the desire world. Without the chaotic source world, they could not reach the chaotic source realm. It would even be harder for them to pass the tests in the Soul City and the Land of Bone Tribulation, so they also could not possibly reach the eternal realm. The other shore they entered is my master's mysterious yellow tower. It's different from your other shore, Dale said with a small grin. Asterisk. I see. Finally, Zen sighed in relief. He felt gratified to hear that Rocher had reached the 32nd stage of the other shore realm. Afterward, he asked Dale about the recent situation of his family members. As the eldest disciple of the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, Dale's most important duty was to take charge of the mysterious yellow tower. Of course, he remembered everyone inside it clearly. He could even tell everyone from Zen's descriptions. After he had answered Zen's questions, he suddenly asked, you asked about your parents and your master, but you didn't ask anything about your son. Don't you want to know where he is? My son. Zen was stunned again. Jeffrey, is he also in the ruin graveyard? As far as he knew, his son was in the abstruse energy world. How could he have anything to do with the ruin graveyard? The primeval Lord of Heaven was also confused. Since the deleting space had closed, no one knew about Jeffrey's and Zia's whereabouts until now. Did Dale really know where they were? Still, it seemed impossible. Of course, he is not in the ruin graveyard. He is in the main world, said Dale. I know he is in the main world, but how did you know? Zen asked. Previously, Dale had answered, I don't know, to every question, but now he seemed to know everything. There was such a glaring difference that everyone was confused. Then, Dale told Zen what had happened in the mysterious yellow tower. Upon hearing that Jeffrey had climbed to the top of the 4 pillars, he quickly began to worry. He truly never expected that Jeffrey would reach that unimaginable place after he had explored the abstruse energy world. Nevertheless, now that he knew that his son was safe and sound, he could reassure Letitia. At that moment, he dissipated his avatar, and Dale and the primeval Lord of Heaven retrieved their souls from his inner world. Then, the crack he had torn apart surged, and the ancestry-level bloodline quickly repaired it. Your primitive land has opened up completely now. As to how to strengthen it and use the ancestry-level bloodline, you have to explore those by yourself. I have completed the task my master assigned to me. Now, it's time to go back, Dale stated. Zen cupped his hands and said, Master Dale, since you came from the Jade Pure Realm, do you know how to go to the center of the Jade Pure Realm? The center of the Jade Pure Realm? Dale felt slightly taken aback. He did not know why Zen was interested in that place. Chapter 3727, The Sound Behind the Door. A part of the Jade Pure Realm was occupied by the Snake Spirit Sect. Its entire northern area was the base of the Snake Spirit Sect, while the central area was the most critical. It was not easy to get there. Why do you want to go to the center of the Jade Pure Realm? Dale asked in confusion. For him, Zen should have focused on developing his primitive land instead of thinking about other things. Someone asked me to, said Zen. Who? The Monkey Spirit King? Asked Dale. Zen shook his head. The Monkey Spirit King didn't know anything. He couldn't even give any useful advice at all. Master Dale, you have also entered the Eternal Scroll painting, right? Do you know who built it? Zen asked. The brush wielder, Dale answered quickly. It wasn't long before he was introduced to this name. After his master traveled through the main world, he found out about all the passageways to the secondary worlds being controlled by the brush wielders. The brush wielders knew many secrets. Once, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord had secretly supported a talented creature in stage 32 on the other shore. He helped him enter the Eternal Scroll painting with a subtle motive: he wanted to contact the brush wielder. The creature successfully passed through the Eternal Scroll painting and reached the Eternal Realm, but he didn't see the brush wielder. When the creature failed, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord decided to give up his plan. Dale was filled with excitement as Zen mentioned the brush wielder. "How about you? Have you seen him before?" he wondered. "Yes," Zen nodded. "He is the one who asked me to go to the center of the Jade Pure Realm." After thinking for a while, Dale frowned. That was all he said. His tone changed as if he was expecting more. "Yes," Zen replied. "Should there be anything else?" he asked while scratching his head. The brush wielder did not reveal too much information. Even the conflicts in the Four Spirits sect were pieced together by Zen later. "Ha ha," Dale sneered. "It seems that the brush wielder has no idea. We can't enter the center area now. Our efforts will only be in vain even if we overcome many obstacles in entering it." "What do you mean?" the primeval Lord of Heaven asked in confusion. "My master has been there," said Dale. During the long war between the Snake Spirit sect and the Bird Spirit sect, it was not only the Snake Spirit sect that always had an advantage. There were several times that the Bird Masters almost reached the Heavenly Square City. Their goals were completely different from the Snake Masters. Their objective was not to occupy the Jade Pure Realm. Instead, they all had a strong desire for destruction. They aimed to stop everything so they could annihilate the Snake Spirit sect. Under normal circumstances, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord had no chance to leave the bubbles. However, when the Bird Spirit sect suppressed the Snake Spirit sect, an opportunity presented. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord successfully broke into the center of the Jade Pure Realm. "Did the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord find anything?" Zen asked eagerly. Dale glanced at him and replied, "A huge altar was buried there. My master tried his best to enter, but a door stopped him." "A door?" Zen and the primeval Lord of Heaven looked at each other. There was a sound behind the door. "A strange song, as if someone was whispering in a soft voice," said Dale. "It is Sanskrit," said Zen. Dale nodded. It was a pity that my master couldn't understand Sanskrit. Aside from the sound being nearly inaudible, he didn't know what it was about. Among the creatures in the chaos, only Zen and his son could communicate in Sanskrit. Jeffrey could even freely travel within the main world. On the other hand, Zen relied on the core of the Heavenly Obsession civilization to decipher Sanskrit quickly. Although the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord had traveled through the main world, it was not an ordinary tour. Elder Shui created a huge illusion for him. The illusion showed him everything about the Four Spirits sect, yet he was still unable to understand Sanskrit. "My master tried every means but still failed to open the door," Dale said regretfully. Only a few doors could block the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord on the other shore. Later, my master speculated that the one behind the door was probably the human spirit king, Kincaid, said Dale with a suspicious face. "Unfortunately," he sighed, "we can't find the key." "I have that key," Zen blurted out. "What?" Dale said, astonished. "I said I have the key," Zen repeated seriously. He opened the Sumeru space and took out a key, then handed it to Dale. The key looked unremarkable. It didn't even appear to be anything special. After running his fingers through the key in his hand, Dale stared at Zen in disbelief. He felt as if he was being fooled. "It's true. You can ask the primeval Lord of Heaven if you don't believe me. I got it from the cabin on top of the Soul City," Zen said convincingly. Dale turned to look at the primeval Lord of Heaven. "It's absolutely true," the latter confirmed. The primeval Lord of Heaven never lied. Dale took a deep breath and headed to leave. "I'll go report it to my master now." Zen and the primeval Lord of Heaven wanted to go to the Jade Pure Realm with Dale, but he rejected them. He insisted on going alone. The Bird Spirit sect and the Snake Spirit sect were fighting fiercely in the Jade Pure Realm. It was a complicated situation. Dale relied on his bloodline talent to quietly pass through the Jade Pure Realm. If he took Zen and the primeval Lord of Heaven with him, they would be exposed. They had to wait for the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord to make a decision. Not long after Dale left, a visitor arrived in the Night View Island. It was the Wing King, followed by 199 treacherous beings swarming towards the land. These treacherous beings were the human spirits living on the winding road. They were also known as the World Builders. When Zen woke Campbell up, he had cleared the pure sky platform of trouble and made it easier for the other human spirits to awaken. At that time, he had to hurry to the Night View Island, so he entrusted the challenge to the Wing King. The Wing King thought it was easy in the beginning. As long as the human spirits possessed other creatures, they could run to the pure sky platform by themselves. The Wing King only needed to carefully follow them all the way, and when they woke up, he would tell them the truth. But the problem was the human spirits' wishes were different. The wishes of some of them were not on the pure sky platform, so the Wing King and the awakened human spirits had to spend more time helping others wake up. For the past years, the 200 human spirits had been living in a daze. They felt indescribable emotions as they met again in the Night View Island. After Campbell, the first human spirit to awaken, told them about the situation of the Four Spirit sect and the chaos, they were furious and swore to avenge the human spirit sect in Kincaid. Dozens of them were already positioned, preparing to rush out. You think you're stronger than the Monkey Spirit King? Even the Monkey Spirit King hasn't taken any action. Are you really going to launch an attack now? Zen stopped the human spirits with his voice resonating from his inner world. Although his inner world had transformed, the continents had been completely preserved. The core of the heavenly obsession civilization remained, helping Zen communicate in Sanskrit. The human spirits were just hostility-level treacherous beings. They were proficient in building the secondary worlds, but they were weak. Dealing with them might be difficult because they wouldn't die, but the light of annihilation emitted from a holy stone was enough to shatter their souls. Chapter 3728, Teeth. The human spirits had calmed down after hearing the words directly from Zen. Plotting revenge against the Snake Spirit sect was like digging their own graves. It was a useless and self-destructive plan. We understand, but what else can we do? One of the human spirits chimed in. This human spirit's name was Powell. He was regarded as the leader of this group of world builders. Campbell and all the other human spirits were completely obedient and loyal to him. Your understanding of the chaos is deeper than ours. We need your help if we ought to find out where the human spirit king is, Zen humbly replied. And why should we believe in you human beings? How can we trust you? Powell stared at Zen. There was a look of utter skepticism in his face. These world builders created the human beings. It was because of them that Zen and the others existed. Powell considered human beings like Zen and the primeval Lord of Heaven as mere carvings of the human spirits. Therefore, how could the human beings of the secondary world be the ones to lead the human spirits of the main world? This was quite unthinkable to them. As a matter of fact, Campbell and the others had the exact same thoughts. They couldn't quite accept that notion. Because they were their creators, it was normal for the human spirits to think that they were superior to human beings. Nevertheless, Zen didn't care about Powell's doubts and concerns. He just smiled gently and said, because the Monkey Spirit King trusts me. With that, Powell and the other human spirits fell silent. They could not argue with that. In actuality, the world builders didn't have a good position in the Four Spirit sect. They weren't even permitted to enter the 10 Directions house. The Monkey Spirit King chose to put his trust on Zen. This proved to be the biggest support in Zen's favor. After that conversation, the world builders had temporarily settled down on the Night View Island. In the past few days, Judson had tirelessly remolded the Pear Hill. He worked on it day and night. He had already dug out about 1/3 of the west side of the entire Pear Hill. The stones he unearthed had been turned into metals using the force of truth. In turn, these metals were placed in a certain pattern. They formed an enormous circular structure that was thousands of miles in length. Meanwhile, Kendrick had set up an array upon the huge structure. The array has already been set up. It can be activated at any point in time, Kendrick said to Zen impassively. Zen nodded and took out the mother butterfly given to him by the real snake goddess. Slowly, he began to sense the location of the young butterflies. One of these young butterflies was attached to the primitive land. Therefore, he would be able to feel the primitive land's location using the mother butterfly. According to the real snake goddess, this would work no matter how far away he was. He closed his eyes and infused his consciousness into the mother butterfly. Afterwards, he felt a faint existence deep in his heart. Following where it led, he found the location of that specific butterfly. He opened his eyes and said, "Northwest." Towards that direction. Zen immediately pointed at the distance. "Change the direction," Kendrick conveyed to Judson emotionlessly. There was a deep rumbling sound as Judson began the adjustment of the structure. The enormous circular structure leaned against the side of the Pear Hill. Judson had made a huge turntable. Under his careful manipulation, the turntable adjusted the direction of the huge structure. "Okay, go," Judson motioned to them. Seeing his signal, Kendrick and Gerald released the truth power simultaneously. Aside from the two Chaos Ancient Gods, the Eternal Realm Warriors and the Holy Soul Realm Warriors also had contributions. Each one of them released their blood power. In a short amount of time, massive amounts of energy began to accumulate in the west of the Pear Hill. This energy was channeled into a tall tower. And at its top, sat a young girl named Yan. She had already started to utilize the function of the energy shaft. As soon as the violent and gentle energy accumulated inside the energy shaft, she immediately transformed it. All the energy absorbed by the energy shaft poured intensely into the array upon the enormous rounded structure. As the massive amount of energy flowed into the array, it emitted a loud buzzing sound. Soon after, the entire array began to flash. A bright and blinding light shot out of it. It exerted a mighty push onto the enormous circular structure. Subsequently, the force was evenly distributed to the entire Pear Hill to help speed up its movement. Whoosh, whoosh. Gradually, the Pear Hill began to change its direction. This colossal structure left a long trace in the empty chaos. After adjusting its course, it began to move at such an extraordinary speed towards the northwest of the chaos. As the Pear Hill set off its new course, Zen sighed. It's a pity we didn't meet the sky-rending rhinoceros. If we just go directly through its space cave, I'm sure we can save a lot of time. Zen had once traveled through the space cave created by the sky-rending rhinoceros. During that time, he was headed to the source world from the divine land. The space cave was a shortcut to the source world. Kendrick was standing next to Zen the whole time. When he heard this, he laughed softly. It's quite impossible for the Pear Hill to pass through the space cave made by the sky-rending rhinoceros. If Othniel was still alive, we could have gone through the space cave he made. The sky-rending rhinoceros was one of the top 10 beasts of the chaos. Its strength was merely comparable to that of an eternal realm warrior. Naturally, the chaos ancient gods didn't take it seriously. Stop worrying. With the help of the array and Yan's energy shaft, the Pear Hill can move at an extremely high speed. Let's just wait and see. Judson chimed in as he heard them talking. He had absolute confidence in their abilities. Zen smiled and agreed. With the help of 3 chaos ancient gods, the human race is truly lucky. The Pear Hill's speed was steadily accelerating. Right now, there was an immense distance between the source world and the Pear Hill. The source world actually looked like a full moon up in the sky. The hundreds of millions of human beings and the members of the snake goddess race on the Pear Hill had been extremely terrified in the past few days. Never in their lives did they imagine that the Pear Hill would leave the source world and carry them to an unknown place. They had no idea of what kind of fate awaited them in the days to come. Meanwhile, Zen's inner world was still evolving at breakneck speed. All he could do was to watch as it developed. Every time a monstrous tsunami occurred, a large patch of land would emerge from the sea. In the beginning, the land only appeared gradually and occupied a very small part of the sea. Not long after, more volcanoes at the bottom of the sea began to erupt. This terrifying and catastrophic force would cause a monstrous tsunami. Soon enough, more patches of land sprang up like mushrooms after rain. These lands began to merge with each other and formed large continents. After a while, different kinds of plants began to appear. One moment, it was still a bare continent. The next, it had turned into a lush grassland. The time flow rate was so fast that it made people feel suffocated. The inner world's development trend in the past revealed that all sorts of creatures would appear after the plants. These creatures would slowly obtain intelligence and establish tribes. Afterwards, these tribes would turn into cities. These cities would transform into great forces, empires, and even civilizations. Zen was not allowed to interfere with the development of the primitive land. Therefore, he could only watch in silence as it evolved. Unfortunately, the situation did not develop as Zen imagined. There were so many things that didn't go according to his plan. Some kind of bamboo shoot-shaped plants grew on these continents. After these plants were born, they began to devour other plants frenziedly. They started growing ceaselessly. Therefore, the other plants on the continents merely became food for the bamboo shoot-shaped plants. After a short amount of time, all of the plants on the continents were devoured by these predatory plants. These plants also quickly grew from dozens of feet to thousands of miles in height and extended all the way to the edge of the primitive land. Zen had seen some gigantic plants in the source world. Some intelligent plants were even able to reach the other shore realm. However, none of them could compare to these bamboo shoot-shaped plants. As these insatiable plants became thousands of miles tall and hundreds of miles in diameter, they intersected and gathered at the edge of the primitive land. Zen frowned as he observed them for a while. His pupils narrowed slightly, and one word popped into his mind. Teeth. This was what he imagined they were. If he imagined the primitive land as the head of a giant beast, then these bamboo shoot-shaped plants were the teeth of this beast. Chapter 3729, Downgrade. As Zen arrived at the edge of the primitive land, he approached the huge plants which resembled bamboo shoots with great caution. When these plants reached their current size, their cyan color faded and was replaced by a golden sheen. They appeared very sturdy and strong. Just as Zen was about to move closer, the plants in the shape of bamboo shoots that had intertwined to resemble dog teeth suddenly separated and began to snap at Zen within a few seconds. Zen was not prepared and barely had any time to dodge. His whole body was bitten, ground, and chewed to pieces by the teeth. Luckily for him, it was just an avatar. Buzz. On the continent at the center of the primitive land, Zen's avatar condensed again. He appeared angry and disgraced. In the past, he had always had complete control over his inner world, though it was still quite small. Now that it had expanded, he couldn't believe that he was bound to it instead of the other way around. "Do you want to fight with me?" Zen challenged, looking into the blood mist in the sky. Just then, a thick cloud of blood mist floated in the air above him like an animal taunting its prey. "Then come on," Zen said coldly. All of a sudden, he had an idea. The continents floated in the sky had linked to one another. As long as he remained on these continents, Zen was omniscient. He had to use this to his advantage. Crack, crack, crack. As the continents connected, Zen stretched out his hand and grabbed in the air. The newly combined continent rose and eventually reached the highest point of the primitive land. Before Zen knew it, the blood mist that came from the ancestry-level bloodline hovered right above his head. Zen slowly stretched out his hand and immersed it in the blood mist. "Seize it." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A powerful storm formed at the center of Zen's hand. Whoosh. With one toss, the storm swept up and with astonishing speed, sucked the floating blood mist within seconds. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The ancestry-level bloodline wouldn't go down without a fight. It morphed into blood-red winged bugs in an attempt to escape the storm. However, a storm created by the all-powerful creator could not be resisted. This was the general rule of any inner world. Though this was a special case as the primitive land was wrapped around the inner world, the rule still applied within the range of the continent. Whoosh, whoosh. Eventually, as a large amount of the blood mist was sucked into the storm became tinted with red. On that note, the ancestry-level bloodline counterattacked. The plants in the shape of bamboo shoots at the edge of the primitive land turned and pierced towards the continent. All of a sudden, thousands of stalagmites sprouted from the bottom of the primitive land and shot straight up into the sky. If no one put a stop to the plants and stalagmites, it would only be a matter of minutes until the entire continent would be smashed into pieces. However, just as they approached the continent, Zen's eyes flashed and an invisible space wall appeared at the edge of the continent. His almighty abilities made the space wall indestructible. Crack, crack, crack. The plants in the shape of bamboo shoots rushed towards the space wall but could not penetrate it. The stalagmites that grew from the ground met the space wall and shattered. "Though you are powerful, this is my inner world. I am still in charge here." Whoosh. The storm that was once a small ball in Zen's hand spread out and covered more areas. He controlled the continent to move in the primitive land as it absorbed all the ancestry-level bloodline it could find. Drip, drip, drip. Once the blood mist was completely sucked into the storm, it returned to Zen's palm and became drops of viscous blood. Before, Zen could do nothing to the ancestry-level bloodline. When the bloodline was driven mad, it took control of Zen's body without hesitation. Now that Zen brought the ancestry-level bloodline into his inner world, the tables had turned. The ancestry-level bloodline that gathered into a ball formed into a bloody human. It reached out and grabbed Zen's chest. Puff! The hand grasped Zen's chest and turned into threads that drilled through Zen's body. He was sliced into 1,000 minuscule pieces. It was a good thing that this was only Zen's avatar. Within a moment, another avatar appeared and grinned at the bloody man. Puff! The bloody man showed no mercy. He raised his hand, gripped Zen, and began to slice through the avatar once again. Not long after, Zen's third avatar appeared. He decided to go with a different approach. "We should sit down and have a good talk." He had a feeling if he'd attacked, the same thing would have happened again. When Zen spoke calmly, the bloody man calmed down. He did not attack Zen again, but he did not respond either. Zen let out a huge sigh of relief. Ever since he fused with the ancestry-level bloodline, Zen exerted much effort to communicate with it. However, the ancestry-level bloodline always ignored him and acted on its own thoughts. Now, the bloodline no longer resisted his communication. Zen raised his hand and 2 chairs appeared before them. He gestured for the man to sit before he made his way to his own chair. The bloody man silently looked at Zen and sat down. The moment he sat down, he mimicked Zen's body but was still made up of blood. If it weren't for the primitive land, you'd be no match for me, the bloody man spoke out. Not only did he mimic Zen's body, but his voice, too. The ancestry-level bloodline could analyze all kinds of energy and deal with any bloodline power, no matter how strong they were. Now that it was connected to the primitive land, it became bound to the rules. This was the main reason Zen could take it back when it was merely blood mist. If not for the primitive land, even if Zen were 10 times stronger than he was now, he wouldn't have been able to do anything to the bloodline. Ah, so you could talk even before. Why did you keep silent all the time? Zen asked with smile. Spiritual creatures could gain extraordinary wisdom after they lived a long time. The ancestry-level bloodline was no exception to this. Because I had to observe you well, the bloody man said, emotionless. Observe me for what? Zen raised an eyebrow. To see if you are trustworthy, the bloody man nodded. After the ancestry-level bloodline was brought back by the bird spirit King Xian, it had been trapped in the eternal divine courtyard. During those years, the Four Spirits sect kept exploiting its power. It had no clue where it came from nor whom it belonged to. The bloodline spent its life aimlessly. When it decided Zen was an excellent host, it wasted no time and immediately integrated with him. As Zen carried the ancestry-level bloodline, the bloodline reconstructed Zen. You have become a part of me. Don't I deserve your trust? Zen said welcomingly. The bloody man coldly glanced up at Zen and looked back down. In a world that has been downgraded, no one could be trusted. Not even you. Downgraded. Zen shook his head in confusion. What do you mean? The bloody man sighed and continued to explain. If a creature in the main world becomes a creature in the chaos, it has been downgraded. After the monkey masters died, they became treacherous beings. That is a kind of downgrade. Chapter 3730, The Origin of the World. Upon hearing the blood man's explanation, Zen soon understood. He smiled and paraphrased, so, all the creatures of the main world have been downgraded. All members from the Four Spirits sect had perished in the chaos, and they had all been transformed into treacherous beings. In theory, they had all been downgraded to creatures of the chaos. The blood man stared disdainfully at Zen as he continued to clarify, it's not just the creatures that have been downgraded but also the entire main world. What? Zen was almost dumbstruck. The entire main world has been downgraded. How is that even possible? Why would it be impossible? The blood man added in a nonchalant voice, the chaos emerged from the downgrade of the main world. The so-called world builders knew the method of downgrade, and they unfolded a portion of the main world. That was how they created secondary worlds. They unfolded a portion of the main world. Zen's eyes were like saucers with astonishment. Campbell had never made any mention of such things to him before. He was only aware that the world builders were responsible for constructing secondary worlds and extracting energies from the secondary worlds through the four pillars. Unfortunately, they didn't know that once the downgrade had begun, there would be no turning back. Sooner or later, the entire main world would be downgraded, the blood man explained. Why are you so confident of these things? Zen queried. Zia had been in the abstruse energy world for a very long time, and Jeffrey could adapt to the environment of the main world. Moreover, Zen knew there were still creatures living within the main world, such as Pompeo's kin. The blood man leaned closer to Zen and whispered with a smile, because the main world was also birthed from downgrade. The entire main world is an unfolded section from a higher level world. This unexpected information struck Zen silent. For a moment, he was utterly speechless. The main world was already vastly beyond his comprehension. What could a world at a higher level than the main world be? The gears in his mind were spinning as he tried to imagine this. The blood man had already anticipated Zen's reaction. He rocked back in his chair and explained in a lazy voice, in fact, you've already heard of that higher level world. It's known as the deep space among the Four Spirits sect. You came from the deep space. Zen exclaimed as realization flared in his mind. He had read about the deep space in the stone tablets of the Monkey Spirit sect, and he memorized the most relevant information pretty well. Among the Four Spirit sect, the deep space was seen as the origin of everything. For instance, the ancestry-level bloodline also originated from the deep space. You're right. The blood man nodded his head sagely. The deep space is what the Four Spirits sect named it. In truth, it is called the stellar world, and it is a fifth-grade world. A long time ago, a part of the stellar world was downgraded, and it became the so-called main world. The main world is actually called the grand lower world. That means our world. Before Zen could finish speaking, the blood man answered his unspoken question. It is a third-grade world, the lower extreme world. It's a world of energy diversification. Every time a world is downgraded, different kinds of its energy diversify and split up. A 6th grade world has 86 kinds of energy. A 5th grade world has 140 kinds, and a 4th grade world has 373 kinds. 373. Zen knew this number intimately. That was the exact number of all the abilities contained in the ancestry-level bloodline's 4 quadrants. What about a 3rd grade world? Could it be? Zen was thinking of another number. 3001, the blood man said, instantly seeing where Zen's mind was going. There are a total of 3001 types of energy in this world. Zen stared straight at the blood man and sensed the vigor of the bloodline power surging throughout his body. He couldn't restrain himself and remarked with pity, although the energy has varied greatly, their power became weakened at the same time. The power of the godly ways could never match up to the power of the bloodlines that originated from the ancestry-level bloodline. In fact, they couldn't even hold a candle to the other shore tokens, let alone the bloodlines. The only exception had been the powerful ways blending energy that emerged when the evil god had merged all of the godly ways together. There is a heavy cost involved in downgrade, the blood man continued. Then why would the 4 spirits sect have chosen to downgrade their world? Zen blurted out in confusion. They were deceived, the blood man simply stated. What? Zen was startled, he would never have seen this answer coming. The entire 4 spirits sect has been lied to. Downgrade is a highly dangerous act, the blood man said. What danger does it involve? Zen's interest was burning with curiosity now. Even though the energy had been greatly weakened, everyone seemed to live and go about their business. The treacherous beings were now considered to be indestructible. The blood man once again looked down at Zen with an aloof gaze as he said, since a world can be downgraded from the 5th grade to the 4th grade, and from the 4th grade to the 3rd grade, then it's possible that it can also be further downgraded from the 3rd grade, becoming a 2nd grade world. A 2nd grade world. Zen felt a sense of foreboding fill him, and his face darkened. You don't need me to paint you a picture. You have visited similar worlds, the blood man explained. The eternal scroll painting, Zen confidently replied. Yes, the blood man grimly nodded. The strange experience in the eternal scroll painting had left a grim impression on Zen. He had been completely transformed into a 2-dimensional figure like a painting, and moving had been a task of great difficulty. You were not completely downgraded when you turned into a part of the eternal scroll painting. You could still escape from the painting and observe everything around you. Once the world is completely downgraded, all you would see will be lines of different lengths, and you wouldn't be able to distinguish one thing from the next, the blood man explained. The types of energy will increase, becoming less mighty, from 3001 to 830,000. Zen tried to envision the 2nd grade world as described by the blood man, and he couldn't help but shudder at the thought. Although there would be many more kinds of energy, one would only be able to see lines there. What a boring world it would be. Everything has been hazy since I left the deep space. Many of my past memories about the deep space are now lost. I can't even recall who I was or where I came from, but I still remember my one true mission, which is to prevent the world from being downgraded, the blood man said resolutely. However, the downgrade has already begun, and the entire 4 spirits sect has become involved. I couldn't tell who was really behind the downgrade, so I had to watch everything in silence. I couldn't trust you then because you might also be the downgrader. The Zen, transformed from the ancestry-level bloodline, became pensive and gazed thoughtfully ahead. From where he stood, no one was trustworthy, including Zen. Strictly speaking, world builders like Campbell could be seen as enemies of the ancestry-level bloodline. How could I be the downgrader? Zen rolled his eyes at the blood man. Believe me, it must be the Snake Spirit King. After all, he deceived the 3 other kings into entering the chaos and killed them all. The Snake Spirit King is the most probable suspect, but the Bird Spirit King also holds a dubious distinction, and so does the missing Human Spirit King. The blood man's face became grave as he said, I can offer you all my help, but you have to assist me by finding and killing the downgrader, even if that person is Kincaid, the Human Spirit King. Zen hesitated for a brief moment, but the determination burned in his eyes. He didn't know why the world had been downgraded, but he knew without any doubt that if it continued like this, everyone would be doomed. This would be much more terrifying than the collapse of the chaos. If there really was a downgrader, Zen would use all of his skills to kill that person. He wouldn't hesitate, even if his opponent was Kincaid, the Human Spirit King. I will find and kill the downgrader. I swear to you, Zen pledged solemnly. The blood man smiled, and then he was transformed into the original form of the ancestry-level bloodline. Then, my power is now yours. Chapter 3731, following. Zen did not restrain the ancestry-level bloodline, and as a result, it turned into a blood mist and evaporated in the air in the primitive land. In turn, the primitive land began to tremble again, and blood waterfalls flowed out from the blood mist on the dome. When the blood waterfalls had flowed down to the bottom, they condensed and formed blood pillars. There were a total of 373 blood pillars, and each of them had a corresponding type of blood power of the ancestry-level bloodline. Buzz! Bright blood light suddenly appeared within the blood pillars, and then turned into long arrows that flew towards Zen. However, he did not dodge and allowed the arrows to hit him. Puff! As soon as the first blood arrow struck him, he felt something appear in his mind, and it turned out to be the blood power. That blood power was an ability in the creation quadrant. Before he could even test it out, more blood-red arrows shot towards him. Puff, 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 puff. Every time a blood-red arrow hit him, a specific kind of blood power appeared in his mind. More than 30 seconds had passed, and all the blood-red arrows had entered his body. Then, the full power of the ancestry-level bloodline started to appear in his mind. The power of space. At that moment, he stretched out his hand and pointed to the distance. Afterward, layers of square spaces appeared somewhere in the primitive land. The spaces were surprisingly stable and almost as good as the space Othniel had created with the truth power. Destructive power. Explode. Red flames filled the air as all the spaces exploded at the same time. The destructive power spread out, and fires engulfed the entire primitive land in the blazing heat. Creation. Just then, Zen spread out his hands in the air. When the energy in the creation quadrant fanned out, long swords appeared out of thin air from all directions. Naturally, none of the swords were ordinary weapons as they appeared out of nowhere. Thousands of them fell like rain and collided with each other, making crisp and pleasant sounds. Soon enough, they quickly piled up into a sword mountain. In general, the Chaos Ancient God, Judson, could create things out of thin air. Zia could also do the same with the help of the Truth of 3 energy construction, but the grade, quality and speed of the items they created were far inferior to Zen's. Life. Zen glanced down. The emerald life energy began to gather and turned into over 100 light dots, which took shape into a human. Not long after, human figures walked out of the light dots. They looked exactly like Zen, and their physical strength and power were on par with the Eternal Realm warriors. Although he could create many incarnations in the continent, they could not leave his inner world. However, these men who looked like him were genuine people who could be released to participate in the battle. Pick up the swords, he shouted. Upon his command, all of the Zens picked up the swords on the ground. With a slight shake of their wrists, they turned around and slashed towards the sky. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Over 100 rays of immensely sharp silver sword radiance flew straight up to the sky and cut across the dome of the primitive land. After that, they stopped. It seemed that the ancestry-level bloodline's most basic ability still had such extraordinary power. At this, Zen looked extremely satisfied. In the Jade Pure Realm, a group of gray beetles flew close to the ground with a faint, flapping sound. These beetles were quite agile, as they nearly dodged all the obstacles in front of them while they maintained a 1-inch distance above the ground at high speed. If one did not look carefully, they could even go unnoticed. Then again, the Jade Pure Realm was a magical land, where there was never a shortage of magical other shore creatures. One variety of palm-sized traveling birds had extensive sighting ability. No matter how small or hidden something was, their eyes always discovered it. Goo, goo, goo. When the birds saw the group of gray beetles that hovered just above the ground, they immediately swooped down. While the gray beetles were not slow by any means, the birds were significantly faster. In the blink of an eye, the birds had swept the beetles away and popped them into their mouths. These annoying birds. It turned out that Dale had formed the gray beetles. If he had not encountered those troublesome birds, he could have smoothly returned in that form. Buzz. At that point, dozens of the gray beetles' bodies turned golden, and then swooped towards the birds. Usually, Dale was not afraid of these birds. However, his master, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, had told him that he could not return to his original form in the Jade Pure Realm at any time, or else the Snake Spirit King could catch him. Unfortunately, he could only use limited methods in his current form. Now, he had no choice but to let the gray beetles explode. Bang, 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 bang. The golden beetles exploded as soon as the birds put them inside their mouths, and detonated the birds' heads in the process. "You're courting death," Dale whispered. Just as he finished speaking, he suddenly heard more bird sounds. He looked up, only to be stunned. The explosion just now attracted more birds, and tens of thousands of them rushed downward. Only one beetle remained in the group. If the birds pecked that one last beetle, Dale would die in this place. Luckily, he got to change at the last moment. He quickly turned into a pangolin, stabbed the ground hard, and narrowly avoided such a disaster. It was much safer to sneak around in the form of a pangolin, but his speed got considerably reduced. It took him several days to find the bubble. Eventually, he found the bubble, entered it and transformed into his own form. After that, he called out tiredly, "Old man." The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord appeared by his side and pointed at the entrance of the bubble. Then, the entrance quickly vanished without a trace. As Dale watched the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord's swift movement, he suddenly seemed to have realized something. "Old man, is someone following me?" he asked. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord nodded and solemnly said, "There is a trace of an aura that doesn't belong to you. I'm afraid someone has targeted you." "That's impossible, I've never transformed into a human form," said Dale. Even if one used their spiritual sense to check the other shore creature he had formed, they could not tell if the creature was real or not. He was quite confident in his bloodline ability. Furthermore, the war between the snake spirit sect and the bird spirit sect was in full swing, so they could not possibly have the time to look for him. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord didn't say anything. He just controlled the bubble to move deeper into the ground. In the past few years, others had discovered the bubble about 2 times, but it could freely move as it was not a fixed cave. When it got caught, it naturally hid in a more secluded place. Still, the Snake Spirit King thought that the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord was insignificant, just like a rat that hid underground. Right now, the Snake Spirit King was ready to kill everyone. Both the Bird Spirit King and the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, who hid underground, had to be wiped out. Of course, they would receive even worse treatment than before. Chapter 3732, Lurk in the Dark. When the bubble began to move, it alerted the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord's other disciples. After all, this bubble had been underground and immobile for quite a long time. "Master, what's happening? Master, are you doing that because we were detected?" the disciples asked the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord had many disciples before, but only 10 had followed him into the Jade Pure Realm. He lost 4 disciples in their explorations. Another 2 disciples tried to leave the bubble and ended up being killed by the people of the Snake Spirit sect. Thus, there were only 4 left with him in the bubble. They were Dale, Arthur, Derek and Austin. Dale could transform into anything. Arthur was a pot-bellied man who always wore a beatific smile on his face, like Buddha. Derek was almost the opposite of Arthur with his lanky frame and an ever-serious unsmiling expression. Justin was tall and sturdy and carried a purple golden furnace. His right arm was covered with many flame-shaped tattoos, which would turn into actual fire for the furnace. The fire in the furnace had never been put out in the past tens of millions of years. He took it with him wherever he went. Arthur, Derek and Justin treated the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord with more reverence than Dale did. "Yes, we have been detected," the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord replied tersely, his face grim. He focused on keeping the bubble moving. The bubble confined and concealed the aura of the occupants. Moreover, it camouflaged itself such that it would look like part of its surroundings to an observer. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord concentrated on moving the bubble somewhere they would be safe. The bubble continued forward underground. Only the sound of crunching earth could be heard all throughout. The bubble made slow progress onward. The 4 disciples remained calm. They had been in similar situations before. They fixed all their attention on the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. Suddenly, noises came from outside the bubble. Crack, crack. They were spurred alert by the sound, immediately knowing what it was. "It's a metal-devouring beast," Arthur exclaimed. There were many mysterious creatures living underground in the Jade Pure Realm, and the metal-devouring beast was one of them. The creatures were so named because they fed on the various metals in the earth. They had a keen sense for detecting metal, and even the bubble could not stop them from getting at it. Metal-devouring beasts had broken the bubble with their teeth several times. "I'll scare it away," Dale offered. "You may not be a match for it," Justin warned. "Justin and I will handle it. Justin could capture it and I can just swallow it," Arthur said. "I agree," Derek said. Right now, they knew it would be best for them to stay within the bubble, so everyone agreed on this plan. They immediately got to executing it. Justin and Arthur went to the side of the bubble where the surface already appeared to be bulging. Outside, the metal-devouring beast was trying to break through. "I'm going to catch it now. Get ready," Justin said as he placed his palms on the bulging wall. Another short token slowly emerged from Justin's back. It was an ink brush as tall as a person. The tip of the brush was awash not in ink but with the blue power of space. Justin closed his eyes, and the ink brush began to draw automatically in the air. The blue power of space was depicting the outline of the metal-devouring beast. When the outline was done, Justin opened his eyes, now glowing with a blue light. The metal-devouring beast outside was dragged into the bubble. The creature was completely caught by surprise. It stared blankly at the two human beings suddenly in front of it. Before it could get its bearings, Arthur opened his mouth. Arthur's mouth quickly grew wider and wider until it was almost the size of a cavern. In one gulp, Arthur devoured the 10-foot-long metal-devouring beast. Arthur patted his belly with satisfaction. Got it. He and Justin then returned to the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord's side. The bubble continued drilling tens of thousands of feet deeper and hundreds of thousands of feet northward. Finally, it stopped. Everyone in the bubble heaved a sigh of relief. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord felt safe enough to converse at this point. How did it go on the Night View Island? He asked Dale. Everything went well. Just as you said, the primitive land expanded after the ancestry-level bloodline entered it, Dale replied. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord's face lit up with joy. That is good. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord had wanted to believe Elder Shui, but it was still just the latter's speculation. Now he had confirmation that Zen had succeeded, which meant all his efforts had paid off. Everything was going according to plan. But I have also made another discovery, Dale pronounced. What is it? The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord asked curiously. Zen has the key, Dale answered. What do you mean? The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord pressed. He obtained a key in the Soul City. The brush wielder from the Eternal Scroll painting told him that he could use the key to open the door of the altar, Dale reported. Hearing this, Arthur, Derek and Justin started sputtering in shock. Are you sure? The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord was more surprised than his disciples. Opening the door to the altar was his greatest wish. Dale had a playful streak. He was not beyond making exaggerated statements. Dale looked affronted. Of course, I am. Don't you trust me? I never have, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord responded without missing a beat. Defeated, Dale simply shut his mouth and pouted. There was a basin 100 miles wide at the southern part of the Jade Pure Realm. Water that smelled like wine pooled there, earning it the name Wine Basin. Across the Wine Basin was a narrow path that led to the peninsula located at the edge of the Jade Pure Realm. The peninsula was the stronghold of the Bird Spirit sect. Hence, the Wine Basin was an important pass for the Bird Spirit sect. The troops of the Snake Spirit sect in the Mist City had recently been raiding the Wine Basin. The treacherous beings had already gathered outside the Wine Basin today. Sewell, the troop's commander, was preparing to launch their 12th attack on the Wine Basin. It was a short distance between the Mist City and the Wine Basin. When the treacherous beings got killed, they would come back to life in the Mist City and join the invasion on the Wine Basin again. The treacherous beings could be resurrected infinitely, but it took time. If a treacherous being got killed too many times in a short period, it would take him or her longer to come back. Sewell had a simple strategy. He would order his men to attack the Bird Masters and kill them again and again. That way, the speed of their resurrection would be slowed down and he could finally take the stronghold of the Bird Spirit sect. Right before Sewell gave the order to execute the plan, a white snake came to his side, whispering, "The coordinates are in place." "Are they in the bubble now?" Sewell asked. The white snake nodded. "Yes, Abel and I had put our coordinates in a metal-devouring beast's stomach. It had just been captured and brought into the bubble. You two will not join the battle, then. If you get killed and come back to life, it might tip them off. But we will find them right after we take over the Bird Spirit sect," Sewell said, steely determination in his voice. Chapter 3733, Erase Coordinates. There were a total of 4 teams behind Sewell: the Divine Snake Department, the Black Snake Department, the Cyan Snake Department, and the Abdomen Poison Department. Sewell himself led the Divine Snake Department, which consisted of the strongest elites of the Snake Spirit sect. The Black Snake Department, and the Cyan Snake Department, you attack from both sides. Sewell commanded with authority. The Cyan Snake Department got it. The Black Snake Department, attack. The 2 Snake Masters standing respectively on the left and right teams responded, leading the teams to charge towards the Wine Basin. Divine Snake Department, follow me to attack. Sewell rushed into the Wine Basin first after his order. His body expanded rapidly the moment he rushed into the Wine Basin. The high water splashed on both sides. The elites of the Divine Snake Department followed his lead and also stepped in. The last one of the 4 teams, the abdomen poison department, specialized at using poison. They usually wandered around when a battle was in full swing, but at this moment, they stayed put. Da, da, da. On the right side of the wine basin, a group of human spirits walked fast on the water. They skimmed like dragonflies across the water, advancing with naturally graceful movements. The 3 houses of the human spirit sect were regrouped and joined the cyan snake department. Together with the other members of the cyan snake department, they hurried to the right side of the wine basin. The bird spirits had built many complicated bird nests in the wine basin. These nests were sturdy and huge, supported by complex internal structures. Since they couldn't use spatial transference, the several teams could only break in by force, relying on their bodies. This time, we people of the 3 houses will try our best to take down the first 3 bird nests. If anyone slacks off, I will report them to the cyan snake department and have their coordinates erased forever. Johnny shouted, walking in front of the team. The human spirits of the Black House, the Broad House, and the Joy House had long been dissatisfied with the Snake Spirit sect. Previously, they only guarded the various pure sky platforms and did insignificant things. But now they were involved in a battle with the Bird Spirit sect. The anger in them intensified. The human spirits, monkey spirits, snake spirits, and bird spirits were supposed to be a family. Why had they come to kill each other like this? Shivers ran down their spine when they heard Gianni's warning. In the last round of attack, Heath of the Joy House and Uriel of the Black House purposefully got themselves killed by the Bird Masters. Johnny then reported this to the Snake Masters, and the Snake Masters immediately erased their coordinates. The 2 human spirits then died permanently. The chaos was just a small pond, and all the treacherous beings believed that this state was temporary. Sooner or later they could return to the main world, yet the thought of dying in this small pond was grim and excruciating. Despite the horror, the human spirits had their own plans. Once the fight actually began, the situation would certainly be chaotic. So, it would be normal if anyone accidentally got killed. You can't slack off, Johnny emphasized. On top of that, I will erase the coordinates of the 5 people who die first. Everyone's face darkened with sorrow and fear. Alphonse and Hamilton frowned and exchanged glances secretly. When they set foot on the journey, the 2 human spirits had already devised a plan. If they had a chance, they would lead the human spirits of the 3 houses to take back the coordinates and escape from the Jade Pure Realm. When they stepped into the battlefield, they realized that they had no chance to carry out the plan. The coordinates were closely guarded in the Mist City. Moreover, Johnny also helped the Snake Masters watch them closely. Johnny sensed the emotions of the human spirits. He smiled faintly and said, "This is the order of the Snake Masters. I'm just passing on the word so you won't dare slack off. If you are not convinced, you can ask the Snake Masters yourselves." Everyone stayed silent. To confirm it with the Snake Masters was no different from courting death. As the human spirits rushed dozens of miles forward, 3 huge bird nests appeared in front of them. The lower part of the nest was supported by a row of straight trunks while the upper part was oval-shaped, covered in thick thorns. When the human spirits saw the bird nests, the bird spirits in the nests also spotted them. "Ah!" A frightening cry of eagles reverberated from the bird nests. Swoosh, 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 out came flying a flock of snow-white birds. "It's the snowbird department." They exchanged positions. Someone reminded the others loudly as he recognized the birds. In the previous rounds of attacks, the human spirits fought the Iron Bird department. These were bird spirits that looked like eagles who had vigorous wings. In this round of attack, they thought they would face the Iron Bird department again, but the bird spirit sect seemed to have changed their strategy. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. After the snowbirds flew to a peak, they spiraled down like snowballs, crashing down on everyone. The snowbirds didn't seem powerful with the attack, yet they posed a great threat. When they were several thousand feet from the warriors of the 3 houses, everyone felt a chill rushing among them. In the wine basin, the water up to people's knees quickly began to condense into ice. Even the newly condensed ice was as strong as a weapon. Some people couldn't pull their legs as they became planted to the ice. Puff, puff, puff. 3 human spirits who couldn't get out of the ice were directly hit by the snowbirds. The freezing air blew and enveloped them, turning them into ice sculptures. Killing treacherous beings had never been easy. They were able to recover after being cut into little pieces, let alone being frozen. However, the bodies of the snowbirds had sand grain-sized holy stones hidden in them. The holy stones burst out as the human spirits froze. When the light of annihilation enveloped the ice sculptures, it produced a magical effect. The treacherous beings melted like snow lying under the sun's heat. As the other human spirits witnessed this, they all turned to look at Johnny. Death was not scary. What was terrifying was the removal of their coordinates. 3 people died already? Asked Johnny with a wicked smile on his face. It seems that 5 people is not enough. I will double the number. The 10 people who die first will have their coordinates erased. The human spirits shuddered. Overcome with resentment, they decided to proceed. They all used their best skills to counterattack. Sword haze, destructive move. Alphonse somersaulted and a bright long sword appeared in his hand. The long sword was made of holy stone. Countless rays of snow-white sword radiance mixing with the light of annihilation shone upwards. Puff, puff, puff. The light of annihilation instantly pierced through the snowbirds, shattering them into pieces. Under Alphonse's lead, the human spirits all launched a counterattack. Although the snowbirds had a populous destructive tendency, their defense was extremely weak. They lost their fighting power after being hit by the light of annihilation. The human spirits of the 3 houses were not weak. They worked together forming a strong line of defense. Despite their large number, the snowbirds fell one after another from only 100 feet away. In less than 3 minutes, more than 10,000 snowbirds had been eliminated, leaving no snowbird flying out from the nests again. Chapter 3734, Battle of Attrition. Keep moving. Johnny barked, after having dealt with the snowbirds. Every round of attacks required all human spirits to die in battle. However, this time, all the human spirits stopped in their tracks. The 3 human spirits that were just killed would have their coordinates erased. It was said that 7 more were to suffer the same fate. General Johnny, all of us will die in a round of attack, Alphonse said with a hint of anxiety in his tone. Do you mean the coordinates of 10 people will definitely be erased after every round of attacks? General Johnny, we are all human spirits, Hamilton pitched in. How could you be so cruel? Both Alphonse and Hamilton were leaders of their respective houses, and were far stronger than ordinary human spirits. It was unlikely they were going to die first. However, the members of the 3 houses were of the same sect and race. They tended to look out for each other. When Johnny treated their lives like trash, they felt indignant yet helpless. Johnny stared at Alphonse with mock. If you think 10 is too many, then sacrifice yourselves. Once we reach the quota of 10, the remaining people will be safe. All the human spirits who overheard this felt anger stir in their hearts. Even the several human spirits of the broad house that followed Johnny were furious. One of them, a burly man, cursed loudly. Johnny, it was stupid of me to follow you this whole time. General Johnny, as a general of the 10 Directions house, you are so ruthless. General Johnny, go to hell. The human spirits began to curse him, one after another. As Johnny heard these offensive and harsh reproaches, his disposition remained unchanged. With a bored expression, he said, the monkey spirits in the heavenly square city have all been executed. Is that what you want? The sole reason why the snake masters allowed the 3 houses to exist was because they still found them useful. The second they lost their value, the snake masters would exterminate them swiftly and mercilessly. A hush fell over the crowd. Exchanging nervous glances, no one dared utter another curse. Naturally, no one wanted to die here, in this small pond. Only by living on could they possibly see light at the other end of the tunnel. Through gritted teeth, Alphonse said, warriors of the 3 houses, charge. Then, taking the lead, he rushed forth into the battlefield. Shooting each other helpless glances, the other human spirits had no choice but to follow suit. Johnny watched the people rush into the bird nests with a grim expression. Just then, a small snake-shaped mark appeared on Gianni's shoulder. From the mark, a voice rang out, Johnny, you did a good job. Thank you for your praise, Master Balfour, Johnny replied. Any trace of regret was wiped from his face and was instantly replaced with excitement. Take down the nest in the far right, and our snake spirit sect will reward you generously, Balfour said. When we return to the main world in the future, you will be in charge of the human spirit sect. The snake masters, snake spirits and all the other treacherous beings were extremely dissatisfied while trapped in this small chaos. They had all hoped that one day they would return to the main world. Even the snake spirit king promised that if they were able to come back, the 4 spirit sect would be rebuilt. The snake spirit sect would be the ruling force, and the other 3 sects would probably serve as vassals. However, the status of human spirit king was still good, despite being a vassal. Master Balfour, Johnny said, practically beaming, you are so kind. I will do my best. Then, the snake-shaped mark dimmed gradually, until it completely disappeared from his skin. From 100 miles away, Balfour, leader of the Cyan Snake Department, sneered arrogantly, "When the bird spirit sect is taken down, you will no longer be of any use to me. You want to return to the main world and become the human spirit king? What a ridiculous dream." Creating a divide amongst the four spirit sect was no easy task for the Snake Spirit King. Why on earth would he want to rebuild it upon returning to the main world? Yes, it was true that they planned that the four spirit sect would still exist once they returned, but the Snake Spirit King would be their sole ruler. After muttering to himself for a while, Balfour then turned to his soldiers. "The rate of those damned birds' revival is slowing down," he announced. "Let's take the nests in this round. Charge." The cyan snakes, which were currently coiled before Balfour, had all been quivering with excitement. They were one of the main forces of the Snake Spirit sect. As soon as Balfour gave the order, the snake spirits dashed towards the nests, their forked tongues slipping in and out of their narrow lips excitedly. The nests built by the bird spirit sect were a natural fortress. From the outside, they looked like a haphazard mess. From the inside, however, the structure was incredibly unique. The bird spirits could spread their wings and fly with ease inside these nests, but any enemy that attacked from outside would have troubles navigating, being blocked layer by layer. Thanks to the nest's unique structure, the bird spirit sect were able to block the snake spirit sect's attacks until this point. Swish! Upon entering one of the nests, Balfour moved quickly yet quietly, like a ghost. 2 rows of sharp blades stuck out from the sides of his body, making him resemble a centipede. This was his fighting form. The second a shadow of a bird spirit entered his cone of vision, he'd lunge forward. Without having the time to even cry out, bird spirits would be cut to pieces by the sharp blades. Whoosh! Balfour had felled countless bird spirits when a huge figure emerged from one of the nests. The figure stretched out a pair of sharp claws and swiftly grabbed at Balfour. However, Balfour saw it coming and turned his body slightly, and the blades on the sides of his body clashed with the incoming sharp talons. Clang, 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 clang. As dozens of blades collided with the sharp claws, the sound of clashing metal echoed throughout the bird nest. Balfour retreated a few feet till he found a pillar he could coil around. Climbing up the pillar, his beady eyes finally caught a full view of the figure that had just attacked him. "Duran, long time no see. How have you been?" The giant bird glared at him. He was Duran, the second strongest bird master of the bird spirit sect. With a snort, Duran narrowed his eyes at Balfour. "You're going to die soon. I'm afraid this reunion will be cut short." As soon as he finished speaking, he spread his wings and launched himself towards Balfour. In the blink of an eye, he closed the distance between him and Balfour, talons poised to strike. Balfour immediately raised his coiled body, coming to meet Duran like a spiral blade. However, Duran was much faster than Balfour. He moved like lightning, flashing here and there and striking Balfour swiftly. Each time Duran swooped in, he left deep claw marks on Balfour's back, head, and tail. Additionally, there were also holy stones embedded in Duran's sharp claws. The light of annihilation penetrated through the claw marks into Balfour's body, destroying his body little by little. Seeing he was at a disadvantage, Balfour tried to get out of this tricky situation. He flew upwards, trying to make his way around the complex bird nest, simultaneously trying to dodge Duran's attacks. But obviously, Duran knew the bird nest better than Balfour. No matter where Balfour went, Duran followed. Balfour had nowhere to hide. He desperately rushed to the top of the nest and knocked open a big hole in its roof, flying into the open sky. However, just as he had flown 1,000 feet, Duran swiftly closed the distance. A pair of sharp claws wrapped around the snake's body firmly, despite the blades sticking out of Balfour's body. Unable to fight back, Balfour could do nothing but watch helplessly as Duran dragged him back to the nest. Chapter 3735, Punishment. Trampled under Duran's feet, Balfour remained fearless. Instead, he smiled sinisterly and said, "I'm indeed no match for you, but since you showed up, this probably means that the bird spirit sect cannot deal with our continuous attacks, right?" The snake spirit sect launched 11 attacks before, but Duran did not participate in any. Duran's presence only meant that the bird spirit sect was worn out. They had no choice but to send their stronger bird masters to counter the attacks of the snake spirit sect. "Shut up." Vengeance appeared in his eyes. Balfour's words struck the wrong chord. The battle between the bird spirit and snake spirit sects in the Jade Pure realm had been fierce. However, the two forces were not evenly matched and the bird spirit sect was always left at a disadvantage. However, it proved impossible for the snake spirit sect to take down the bird spirit sect. Though the bird spirit King Xian hadn't awakened, he still had extraordinary strength. It was difficult for the snake spirit king to send the bird spirit sect on their knees. Thus, this seemingly endless war continued for countless years. It never ceased. According to the will of Xian, the bird masters supported the Nihility race in a plot to destroy this chaos. With the help of the bird masters, the Nihility race grew in strength and number. The bird masters were notably impressed with the performance of the Grand Master of Heaven, and they were pleased to see that in this round of chaos, the evil god that joined the Nihility race had controlled the source world for their advantage. Nothing like this had ever happened in the past. This was the bird master's opportunity. If they used the source world to destroy the chaos, everything would easily return to zero. However, not long after the evil god took control of the source world, the snake spirit sect launched another attack. They had even moved the coordinates to the Mist City. They were determined to win the battle. This bird spirit sect had no choice but to resist and counterattack. The treacherous beings from the snake spirit sect launched 11 attacks. The bird masters and spirits eventually grew exhausted. A few of the bird spirits were still being revived, which would take much time. Because some bird spirits hadn't been revived, Duran had to fill the vacancy. However, the attacks of the snake spirit sect never ceased. They assumed that the snake spirit sect would launch countless more attacks until the bird spirit sect's treacherous beings had no more backup. Their tactic of repeated attacks to weaken their army aggravated Duran. He was furious. "Since you are so angry, why don't you just kill me?" Balfour said, emotionless. He didn't care at this point. He just wanted it to be over. After all, he could be revived even if he died. Duran looked at the snake master with a sudden kindness. "I won't kill you. I will merely imprison you." As he spoke his last word, he grabbed Balfour with his claws and flew away. If Balfour was imprisoned, he could not revive himself. This meant a great deal for them, because Balfour would not be able to participate in the next round of battle. "Duran, you don't think we've thought this though?" Balfour said with a smug grin. All of a sudden, the light of annihilation exploded from Balfour's body. His treacherous being form collapsed and disappeared from the grasp of Duran's claws, leaving only a few holy stones that fell to the ground. Just like that, the 12th attack of the snake spirit sect ended after a full day. The snake spirit sect failed while the treacherous beings that participated in the charge were completely annihilated. However, the bird masters felt exasperated. Meanwhile, the group gathered together to discuss countermeasures. Behind the wine basin, golden coordinates floated in the air. Most of the surfaces on the coordinates were dim, which only meant that they lacked energy and needed time to recover. However, the snake spirit sect would not give them enough time to do so. No doubt the 13th round of attack was already underway. The atmosphere of the snake spirit sect in the Mist City seemed more relaxed after what had happened. In the eyes of the snake masters, it was only a matter of time until they defeated the bird spirit sect. In the northwest of the Mist City, golden coordinates glowed brightly and the human spirits of the three houses returned to life. At the same time, Alphonse exited his coordinates in his human form. He appeared fatigued. He went all out in this battle to impress the snake masters just so they would make things easier for the three houses. But when he saw Johnny with his arms crossed across his chest, his expression darkened. As the human spirits resurrected, Balfour stealthily slithered over. He scanned through the human spirits present, and then his gaze landed on Johnny. "You did a good job in this round of attack," he praised. "The revival of the human spirits is fast. The three houses of the human spirits are an indispensable force for our cyan snake department." When the human spirits heard Balfour's words, their jaws dropped and their hearts skipped a beat. If Balfour actually valued the three houses, there was no way he would erase their coordinates. Johnny responded modestly, "This is all thanks to your clever plan." He bowed and continued, "The human spirits feared that their coordinates would be erased, so they fought long and hard. If their lives are not threatened, they would still hold back in the fight." "So you mean," Balfour blinked repeatedly as he analyzed what he'd said. "I had intended to erase 10 people's coordinates. Since the three houses performed well, I suggest we still stick to the original plan of only erasing 5 people's coordinates." Johnny concluded. "Do as you say," Balfour replied. Both Alphonse and Hamilton were furious. The surrounding human spirits glared at Johnny in anger. However, Johnny acted as if he didn't care. In the 12th round of attack, the first 5 people who died were Urim, Ezekiel, Rishi, Sean and Jaden. Every time someone's name was called, that person turned pale and trembled with fright. "General Johnny, give me one more chance." Urim fell down to his knees and begged. Master Balfour, I died only because I was careless this time. I did fight with all my strength. Ezekiel attempted to persuade. Quote, as Johnny faced these people's excuses and begging, his cold expression never changed. Rules are rules. If these rules could be so easily changed, then no one would be working hard. He walked to the coordinates of the 5 with a golden hammer condensed in his hand. This weapon was given to him by Balfour, and was used to dispose of coordinates. With one swing, he lightly hit on one of the coordinates and it shattered to pieces. The human spirit named Urim shrieked in agony. Then, his body lightened and lightened as it slowly turned into a transparent shadow that eventually disappeared. How dare you really do this to us? I will fight you to death. Let's fight together. Ezekiel and Rishi nodded at each other and rushed towards Johnny, while the other human spirits didn't react. Everyone, including Alphonse and Hamilton, was extremely angry, but none of them wanted to walk to their deaths. Before Ezekiel and Rishi could even get close to Johnny, Balfour curled his tail and swung it. Just like that, these treacherous beings dispersed. Johnny looked at them and scoffed, then continued to break the remaining coordinates one by one. Within a minute, the 4 human spirits lost the chance to revive forever and died in the secondary world. Chapter 3736, Release. Silence hung thick in the air as the human spirits of the Broad House, Joy House, and Black House stayed quiet. They knew well that if they spoke out at this time, they would end up in the same miserable situation as those 5 people, and their coordinates would be shattered into pieces. On the other hand, Balfour was quite satisfied with Gianni's deterrence. It seemed that it was a wise decision to hand over these human spirits to Johnny, who would rule over them. Snake Master, our human spirit sect is ready. When will we start the 13th round of attack? Johnny asked, loyalty evident in his face. Balfour thought for a moment, and said, we might have to wait 2 days before launching the 13th round of attack. Although our Cyan Snake Department performed well this time, the Bird Spirit Sect violently counterattacked the Black Snake Department and the Divine Snake Department, and some of the Snake Spirits haven't gotten revived yet. The Snake Spirit Sect suffered huge losses, and the Bird Spirit Sect was even worse. Based on the current situation, the Bird Spirit Sect would have a hard time defending if they got attacked 1 or 2 more times. However, the revival speed of the Snake Spirits was too slow, and it was even a burden to the entire Snake Spirit Sect. You human spirits resurrected quite fast. Sewell asked me to bring your coordinates into the battlefield of the Wine Basin, said Balfour. Then he added, so after you die next time, you can resurrect quickly and launch the attack again. Upon hearing his words, many of the human spirits felt scared once again. It was already very dangerous to put the coordinates in the Mist City. How could they bring those directly to the battlefield of the Wine Basin? If Balfour died, the Bird Masters would surely destroy all the human spirits' coordinates. Of course, they would also die by then. Even the ever-loyal Gianni's face darkened. When I enter the Wine Basin, surely there will be powerful Bird Masters there who will target me. So, I want to hand over the coordinates of the human spirits to you. What do you think? Balfour asked. Alphonse, Hamilton, and the rest all looked at Johnny, who was shocked. That's not applicable. If I'm in charge of the lives of the human spirits, I'm afraid I can't take on this responsibility well, he stated. It doesn't matter. I trust you. You don't have to fight personally. You only need to command the battle, Balfour encouraged. Indeed, Johnny had earned Balfour's trust through his performance in this period. Most importantly, the Snake Spirit King had lost his patience and asked his members to take down the Bird Spirit Sect as soon as possible, so the entire Snake Spirit Sect acted rashly. Furthermore, the 3 human houses were powerful in combat, so Balfour wanted to use their strength to the limit. Thank you for your trust. I won't let you down. Johnny bowed to Balfour respectfully. Balfour nodded and walked to the golden coordinates. With a flick of his long tail, he took Gianni's coordinates away. Although he trusted Johnny, he had to be careful to prevent Johnny from retaliating. Once again, all the human spirits trained their gazes on Johnny. This person had complete control of their coordinates. No one knew what would happen. 2 days later, the Snake Spirit Sect launched the 13th round of attacks. The troops of the Snake Spirit Sect crushed the Wine Basin yet again. Meanwhile, Johnny still led the 3 houses' human spirits to the far right side of the Wine Basin. All the human spirits looked numb. After all, according to the current situation, they would still have a hard time even if they defeated the Bird Spirit Sect. After they passed through the right side of the Wine Basin, the bird nests appeared in front of them again. Suddenly, Johnny waved his hand and arrogantly shouted, "Stop! What other instructions do you want to give us? Alphonse asked, his voice dripped with sarcasm. Johnny stood on the water with a strange expression on his face, as if he thought deeply about his life. In reality, he was a little disappointed and helpless. A sigh escaped from his lips, and he surprisingly felt courageous at that point. Retreat from the far right, bypass the Mist City, and return to the center of the Jade Pure Realm. Now that the Snake Spirit sect has sent their full force to battle, no one is guarding there, he said. In turn, Alphonse, Hamilton, and the others were stunned and stared at Johnny. They wondered what he was up to. Johnny, what do you mean? Alphonse asked. Escape. Run away with your coordinates. Everyone will be free by then. This is the only chance. Johnny said excitedly. Then, he waved his hands and threw out hundreds of golden coordinates. Naturally, many human spirits became ecstatic when they saw their coordinates. After all, their biggest weakness was those coordinates, but to their surprise, Johnny took the initiative and handed them over. Are you going to let us go? Alphonse asked in disbelief. Yes, Johnny answered and stared at him. It was quite hard to get the coordinates back from the Snake Masters. Our only chance was to gain their trust. Still, I feel sorry for those who died, he exclaimed. The Snake Spirit sect had sent the 3 human houses to the Pure Sky platforms to guard some unimportant things in the past. Johnny had always been diligent and never showed any dissatisfaction with the Snake Spirit sect. He had always been loyal and devoted, but that did not mean that he did not see through the Snake Master's ambitions. Don't you still want to be the Human Spirit King? Hamilton asked. These Snake Masters are all vicious. Once the human spirits are not useful for them, will they still let us live? They have eliminated all the monkey spirits. When they destroy the bird spirit sect, all of us will die. Do you think they will help me become the Human Spirit King? Even a 3-year-old child would not believe such a silly promise, Johnny replied with a laugh. As soon as he uttered those words, the people's disgust towards him disappeared immediately. But your coordinates is still with Balfour, Hamilton said. I'm not going to leave, Johnny responded with a faint smile. When Balfour took his coordinates, he had already made up his mind. Swoosh, a look of regret crossed Alphonse's face. We've wronged you this whole time, he muttered. If you haven't treated me like that, how could I get the chance? Johnny said. But the other shore is so big. Even if we escape with the coordinates, I'm afraid it would be hard to find a place to hide, Alphonse mumbled anxiously. Johnny stared at Alphonse and asked, why did the Snake Spirit King suddenly want to kill the monkey spirits? The monkey spirits in the Heavenly Square City were surely not weak, and they were even much more powerful than the 3 human houses. Moreover, they were quite loyal and obedient. They were good helpers of the Snake Spirit sect. Despite that, the Snake Spirit King suddenly removed their coordinates and annihilated all of them. Something was not right. Alphonse only shook his head as he couldn't figure out what was going on. Monkey spirits are usually loyal to the Snake Spirit King, but what if the Monkey Spirit King woke up? Johnny asked. You mean? There was silence as Alphonse stared wide-eyed at Johnny in disbelief. Johnny nodded and continued, I've seen a few human beings on the Pure Sky platform, and they saved the world builders. I don't know if the awakening of the Monkey Spirit King has anything to do with those humans, but I suggest you go to the Night View Island. It was not a secret that the Monkey Spirit King remained on the Night View Island. The human spirits also knew that the passageway to the Night View Island had gotten destroyed. Therefore, Johnny deduced that something had happened on the Night View Island based on the information he had learned. At that moment, the snake-shaped mark on his shoulder suddenly lit up. Chapter 3737, Sheehan's Wish. Johnny covered the snake-shaped mark with his hand and ordered, run. But, Hamilton said reluctantly. What are you waiting for? Go, now, Johnny roared. Hearing this, Alphonse glanced at Johnny and also commanded, all of you, take your own coordinates and leave with me. I won't hear any excuse. Whoosh, Alphonse took the lead and made a series of ripples on the surface of the water as he moved. The other human spirits also followed closely behind after putting away their coordinates. As Johnny saw that the images of the human spirits receded little by little in the distance, a grin gradually appeared on his face. He then removed his hand, exposing the snake-shaped mark. Johnny, what are you doing? Why aren't you attacking the bird nests? Balfour asked in a loud voice. In a minute, Johnny replied. Why, what happened? Why did you even hesitate? Balfour continued asking. Some bird spirits blocked us halfway. It wasn't a wise decision to recklessly attack them, Johnny lied with a straight face. But you're the only one left. Through the snake-shaped mark, Balfour immediately found out that something wrong was going on. Cut the crap and stop being nosy. Johnny snapped back, losing his patience. He suddenly reached out his hand and tapped the snake-shaped mark, which instantly trembled and broke into pieces. Balfour was taken aback when he was suddenly reprimanded by Johnny. He fell silent for a while before he was able to let out an angry roar. It was too late for him to confirm what had really happened. Everything could only be verified after the end of the attack. After all, the 13th round of attack had already begun, so it was far beyond the reach of his power. Taking advantage of the fierce battle between the Snake Spirit Sect and the Bird Spirit Sect, the human spirits of the three houses quickly left the battlefield situated in the Wine Basin. They bypassed the Mist City and the checkpoint of the Snake Spirit Sect, and took the opportunity to head straight into the center of the Jade Pure Realm. However, this didn't go unnoticed in the eyes of the Snake Spirit King. When the 13th round of attack from the Snake Spirit Sect began, Cornelius, the Snake Spirit King, finally made his appearance in the Wine Basin. There was an amber-colored diamond-shaped gem embedded in Cornelius's head, which was a holy item called the Limited Omnipotent Stone. With the aid of this gem, he was able to see everything within a limited area. Thus, everything that was happening in the Jade Pure Realm couldn't escape from his eyes. Previously, when Dale returned to the bubble, he had been captured by Cornelius. Then, Sewell quietly sent the coordinates into the bubble afterward. "There are some deserters," Cornelius said in an annoyed tone. Surprise instantly appeared in Sewell's eyes as he heard what the Snake Spirit King said. "Who dares to escape?" he asked. "The human spirits from the three houses," Cornelius answered briefly. "Then I'll go and capture them right now," Sewell quickly responded. The Snake Spirit King looked at the edge of the Wine Basin and shook his head. "There's no need to do that. We don't have to deal with them personally. Besides, there's nowhere they can go that I can't see. What we need to focus on is the Bird Spirit King." On the peninsula behind the Wine Basin, the bird spirits used the rare gold threads to make a huge nest. On the nest was a giant bird that looked like a swan. His wings appeared to be symmetrical rhombuses, like two magnificent crystal mines as they were spread out. The giant bird's head was resting on the ground of the nest, motionless. His eyes remained wide open, and they were now filled with so much chaos and killing intent. "They should be punished. No one is innocent in this world, and I have to remove all their sins. Those snakes are the root cause of all sins," the giant bird said in his sleep. It was Xian, the Bird Spirit King. For countless years now, he had been crawling on the ground in this position. Even in his unconscious state, he still had a lot of appetite for destruction. Therefore, even as a treacherous being, his combat effectiveness was still terrifying. This was the very reason why the Snake Spirit King had never dared to take him down before. "Our king, you don't have to concern yourself with this skirmish. We can take care of them on our own." "That's right. We, the bird spirits, can't be defeated by them." Three bird masters bowed before the Bird Spirit King and kept on persuading him not to leave the nest. The leader of the three bird masters was called Lawler. He was ranked first in terms of strength among all the bird masters. The second was Duran, and the third was Orville. They all wore a suit of heavy armor that made them look like giant reptiles instead of birds. The three of them were supposed to participate in the battle happening at the Wine Basin. However, when they knew that the Bird Spirit King wanted to set out personally, they had no choice but to stay behind and persuade their king to change his mind. The problem was Xian wasn't totally awake. His subconsciousness was what made him move. Since he had turned into a treacherous being, he had been so full of resentment towards everything in the world. It was his obsession to destroy everything. In fact, the three bird masters were already killed by him countless times. This had been going on for many years. Actually, the Bird Spirit King's thirst for destruction had not been that vigorous recently. He might have gotten tired, or perhaps part of his wish had been satisfied already. However, the fact remained that his wish was still to destroy everything. Although the bird masters knew that Xian wasn't on his right mind, as his subordinates, they had no choice but to stay loyal to him. They were even willing to ruin the entire chaos if they had to. It was because they knew that this was the only way to truly wake their king up. "I can't sit idly by. They have caused my people to suffer. I will kill them all if that's what I need to do," Xian muttered in his sleep. "We can do that ourselves. We're also treacherous beings that could revive repeatedly. Please, my king, let us handle this," Lawler pleaded. The truth was the Bird Spirit Sect was already in great trouble, but Lawler still chose to hide it from Xian. "Those snake spirits are getting closer and closer." Xian suddenly raised his head and looked straight ahead in the direction of the Wine Basin. "He has appeared. He finally dares to come for me. Shihan's expression changed drastically. He got so excited that there was a huge smile on his face while still emitting strong killing intent. The light purple gleam on his every feather began to shine brightly. Clatter, clatter, he gradually raised his head and body. The hard diamond-shaped feathers collided with each other, producing a sound likened to a handful of shells banging together. It was both crisp and harsh. Although the golden nest was still quite far from the battlefield, his eyes were already focused on the image of the Snake Spirit King. Shihan only had one wish. What he wanted the most was to kill Cornelius and then crush the whole world to ruin. One could only imagine how cruel and desperate he had been before he died. My king, please listen to us. You can't act rashly. This is the Snake Spirit King's ploy. He wants to lure you out. You mustn't go out right now. The three bird masters were extremely anxious as they pleaded before their king. However, because Shihan was still unconscious, he wasn't able to think clearly. The words of the three bird masters fell into deaf ears. Clatter, clatter, Shihan had no intention to stop now. Streaks of purple light danced around his wings, and the surrounding space twisted and cooperated in his every move. Swoosh! In an instant, the three bird masters were left there as the bird spirit king disappeared. He only left streaks of purple lights that extended towards the battlefield in the wine basin. Chapter 3738, The Fastest Speed. Among the four sect leaders, the bird spirit king Shihan was the fastest. He also had the most profound understanding of space. To the creatures of the main world, the deep space was an obscure and incomprehensible area. Many of them, including those of the four spirit sect, had entered and explored the deep space. However, only Shihan could explore it easily and effortlessly. He had once reached the unreachable depths of the deep space, making him the only one who could bring back the ancestry-level bloodline. The Snake Spirit King observed Shihan's every move through the limited omnipotent stone and he saw him flap his wings. Shihan is going to make a move, he warned. But Shihan was too fast. Even if the Snake Spirit King watched his movement, he couldn't do anything to stop him. There was always a way to deflate other Thurgies, but the winner was defined by speed. After the Snake Spirit King's alert, Sewell stood on guard. The next moment, they noticed wisps of purple light. Sewell felt a slight chill as a wisp of purple light swept past his body. He then saw a huge bird's claw appear in front of him. The claw disappeared quickly before his eyes. Sewell blinked, uncertain whether it was a phantom or not. At the next minute, an unforeseen force pressed down on them. Crack, 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 3 crevices of tens of thousands of feet long imprinted around Sewell. These were Shihan's claw print. Sewell was then crushed into the depths of the ground, breaking his body into several pieces. Despite the ghastly power of Shihan's claw, it couldn't kill a treacherous being without the help of the light of annihilation. Sewell's broken body parts wriggled like earthworms. They moved towards each other and slowly reconnected into a whole. Sewell couldn't avoid Shihan's claw, neither could the Snake Spirit King beside him. After all, Shihan's target was the Snake Spirit King. The purple light wrapped the Snake Spirit King and a strong force clashed onto him. It was Shihan's huge body. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Because of the impact, the Snake Spirit King recoiled in the wine basin. The high water splashed into an enormous wave because of the Snake Spirit King's weight. After the Snake Spirit King retreated a full distance of about 40,000 feet, he stopped rolling as his thick snake tail pierced into the wine basin. As a snake, he was weak in battle. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The purple light shone brighter from above. Shihan slowly descended from the sky, revealing his complete figure. An overwhelming aura was released from Shihan's body. His dark eyes reflected indescribable hatred from within. Cornelius, you finally dare to come. I have been waiting for you. Shihan said through a loud and thunderous voice. The high frequency made the water in the whole wine basin vibrate, producing a series of ripples. The Snake Spirit King raised his body and silently stared at Shihan. He felt his opponent's undisguised intent of killing him. Within the 4 sects, the Monkey Spirit sect was reckless and aggressive, the Human Spirit sect was proficient in studying, and the Bird Spirit sect was noble and peace-loving. Shihan treated Kincaid, Cornelius, and Orlando as good friends. Even as the internal conflict of the 4 Spirits sect became fiercer through time, Shihan still tried to maintain peace and order. He naively believed that as long as he tried his best, the 4 sects would be as united as they were at the beginning, and that they would all together fight off one powerful race after another. In the 4 Spirit sect, Shihan made the greatest contributions. He found the ancestry-level bloodline which was deemed to be the 4 Spirit sect's foundation, but he never claimed credit for himself or became arrogant. Instead, he selflessly offered his help. But his goodwill didn't bring peace, but more serious disputes. What he didn't expect was the Snake Spirit King would want to destroy not only the entire Four-Spirit sect but also the main world. When he entered the chaos and found out that the Snake Spirit King was to blame, Xian sank into hopelessness. He was overwhelmed by desperation as everything he upheld was shattered. This world was so ugly. The only way to purify it was to ruin everything. The Snake Spirit King needed to pay the highest price. The purple light once again beamed from Xian's body. The area formed by the light belonged to him. This was the case in the chaos, the main world, and even the deep space. The space rules he conceived could be used in the spaces of all levels. His talent was indeed unimaginable. Splash! Xian disappeared again after the purple light circled the Snake Spirit King's body. Crack, crack, with two muffled sounds, Xian's sharp claw had quietly gripped the Snake Spirit King. Whoosh! He flew to the other side of the wine basin grasping onto the Snake Spirit King. When these two huge creatures flew over the wine basin, their figures became invisible from anyone on the battlefield. Even Su'el, who watched the Bird Spirit King, was clueless about where they went. The battlefield in the wine basin was located in the southernmost area of the Jade Pure Realm. After flying at an incredible speed, Xian then landed at the edge of the Jade Pure Realm. In the blink of an eye, he tossed the Snake Spirit King out of the Jade Pure Realm. Xian wished to destroy everything. The simplest way to kill the Snake Spirit King was to throw him into the void dust so that he would be swallowed alive. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Even as a treacherous being, the Snake Spirit King couldn't escape the devouring power of the void dust. The huge body of the Snake Spirit King squirmed desperately in the void dust, but after struggling for a while, he was consumed completely. After he was annihilated, Xian's brutal stare weakened a little. The Snake Spirit King was his biggest enemy, but killing him was not enough to satisfy him. Xian flapped his wings and the purple light floated to the other side. Just as he was about to follow it, a ball suddenly appeared not far away. The ball rapidly expanded, producing a set of golden coordinates. The Snake Spirit King slowly broke out from the golden coordinates. The limited omnipotent stone on his forehead remained intact. After he emerged, the ball engulfed the golden coordinates and disappeared. You didn't die. Xian's eyes widened with confusion. Hiss. You are stupid because you haven't awakened. The Snake Spirit King shook his head mockingly. To kill treacherous beings once and for all, their coordinates had to be destroyed. It was not a secret in the Jade Pure Realm, but Xian seemed to know nothing about it. Well then, I'll kill you over and over until you finally die. Xian roared, once again overcome by killing intent. Chapter 3739, The Source of Curse. Xian's plan was simple. His objective was to kill Cornelius, so from the very beginning, he focused on him alone, locking him as his target. Swoosh! Half of the sky was overlaid with the dispersed purple light. In the purple zone, Xian was nearly indestructible. This was his game. No one would be able to calculate his movements, what more to counter them. Just now, Xian did not fly over the long distance when he took the Snake Spirit King to the edge, nor did he open a space channel. He just disappeared from a place and reappeared at another place. To Xian, it was quite simple, but to the others, it was incomprehensible. With Xian's unpredictable movements, there was no way for anyone to be able to locate where he was or to determine when to strike. Within the purple light, he was moving too fast. As soon as he finished speaking, Xian disappeared once again. Cornelius, the Snake Spirit King, felt his body tremble, and then, before he was able to react, he was lifted into the air and then thrown into the void dust again. It all happened too fast. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Just like that, Cornelius was completely devoured by the void dust, leaving nothing behind. Then the ball that wrapped around his coordinates appeared again. Unfortunately for Xian, the ball appeared outside of the purple light. He knew he had to get the ball, but if he were to step outside of the light, he would put himself in danger. As he extended his wings, the purple light extended as well, reaching for the ball. He treated the light as if it were a part of his body. If he were able to move it far enough to meet the ball, he would be able to claim it without breaking a sweat. However, as the light inched closer to the ball, something strange happened. The ball avoided the light. If the light flew towards the ball would fly even further from it. The two moved at the same speed, making it nearly impossible for the two to meet. After the nearly 100-mile chase, the Snake Spirit King emerged from the ball. As soon as this happened, Xian immediately began his attack, once again enveloping the Snake Spirit King with the light and throwing him into the void dust. However, this time, it was different. Even though the Snake Spirit King was still struggling, his beady, crescent-shaped eyes were telling a different story, one of vengeance. Little did Xian know that a three-headed snake was crawling at his back. The Snake Spirit King was not stupid. From the very beginning, he knew that with Xian's abilities, especially in terms of speed, he would not be able to compete. The Snake Spirit King had all the resources he needed, but he knew he didn't need to exhaust all that to defeat Xian. A holy item could do it for him. The three-headed snake, which was named the Source of Curse, was the second holy item in the Snake Spirit King's collection. It had long been in his collection and had been used by him for a long time. The Source of Curse was able to put 3 curse marks on 3 targets. As long as the opponent killed one of the targets, from the back of the opponent would emerge a three-headed snake. The twist was only the Snake Spirit King could see the three-headed snake. It was invisible to anyone else, even to the one who carried it. Whenever the carrier would kill one of the targets, one of the snake's head would open its eyes. This went on until the carrier killed 3 targets to open all of the heads, eyes. Once all of the eyes were open, the three-headed snake would be in full effect, controlling its carrier. In the past, when the Snake Spirit King used the Source of Curse, he would have to sacrifice 3 snake spirits. In this situation, as the Snake Spirit King revived himself in the form of the treacherous being, he would be able to sacrifice himself 3 times to fully activate his curse. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The three-headed snake snapped all of its eyes open. All of a sudden, Xian began to feel something strange appearing behind him. His resting wings sprung up, trembling with unusual vigor. Against his will, he kept flying in the purple light. Eventually, his body began to leap crazily in all sorts of directions. As the flying speed of Xian increased, the Snake Spirit King saw countless figures flashing within the purple light. He stared at them, realizing they were neither illusions nor shadows. These figures were all Xian, who, in the high speed of flight, appeared to the ordinary eye as multiple bodies. The Snake Spirit King laughed manically. "It's useless, Xian. Whatever you do, you won't be able to get rid of the Source of Curse," he said, sadistically amused with what he was seeing. The way the Source of Curse operated was reminiscent of a blooming flower. The more Xian struggled, the more it thrived, spreading its power further and even greater within its host. As it physically exhausted Xian and sucked all of his power out, it grew stronger and stronger. Eventually, it had completely entangled Xian. The purple light shrank, and Xian fell from the air, grasping for his breath. The Snake Spirit King looked at him mockingly and smiled down on him condescendingly. "You are so pitiful. Throw him into the void dust," he commanded, with no ounce of mercy. Usually, even without the spiritual boat, Xian would be able to sail through the void dust with the help of his large and powerful wings. However, with the Source of Curse sucking all of his power dry, he wouldn't be able to help himself, leaving him to be devoured by the void dust. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Soon, Xian's treacherous being body was dragged by the Snake Spirit King's 3-headed snake and thrown into the void dust. After that, the battle between the Bird Spirit King and the Snake Spirit King finally ended. "The limited omnipotent stone," the Snake Spirit King muttered. The diamond-shaped gem etched onto his forehead began to glow, and he began to see everything in the Jade Pure Realm. To protect Xian, the Bird Spirit sect hid his coordinates. However, in the 3 purities stage, there were only a few things that could avoid the limited omnipotent stone. One of them was the bubble of the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. Having activated the limited omnipotent stone, the Snake Spirit King was made aware of where Xian's coordinates was hidden. He immediately went to the ground, running towards the battlefield in the wine basin. In the middle rear of the battlefield were the 3 bird masters of the Bird Spirit sect, Lawler, Duran, and Orville, fighting fiercely against Sewell. At first, the 3 bird masters followed behind the Bird Spirit King, trying to protect him from danger, but the Bird Spirit King was simply too fast. They were unable to catch up with him. By the time they arrived at the Bird Spirit King's destination, they had found that he already disappeared with the Snake Spirit King, leaving only Sewell. Because they were so worried about Xian's safety, even though they did not want to, they fought Sewell, forcing him to tell them where the Bird Spirit King went. The problem was that Sewell did not know where the Bird Spirit King went with the Snake Spirit King. Even if he knew where they were, it would be impossible for him to say it. The battle was already decided for him. Even Lawler was able to hold Sewell to a draw alone. Moreover, he had the help of Duran and Orville now. Even though Sewell was trying to keep his composure, under the siege of the 3 bird masters, he could hardly hold on. All of a sudden, Lawler's body was held frozen as if he forgot to breathe. "Lawler, what's the matter with you?" Duran asked in confusion, worrying for his friend. He had been working with him for so long, but this was the first time he had seen him stunned into immovability. Lawler gently waved his right wing, revealing the golden coordinates. When Duran and Orville saw this, their expressions changed drastically, joining that of Lawler's. Our king. He has been killed. Has he lost the battle with the Snake Spirit King? The three bird masters were all in a state of confusion and panic, their distressed voices overlapping each other's questions. At this time, this was the last thing they wanted to happen. The Bird Spirit King's strength was not less than the Snake Spirit King's. In this aspect, they probably equaled each other. To think of Xian dying was unacceptable to them, but the result was not that shocking to them as he had not awakened and the Snake Spirit King possessed the holy items. What shocked them more was the short period wherein this happened. While the three bird masters were stirring in their sad air, Sewell, on the other hand, was overcome with joy. He had been continuously defeated, but seeing this was more than enough to provide him with great courage. His body suddenly sprung up into the sky, flying towards the coordinates on Lawler's wing. If the coordinates were destroyed, the Bird Spirit King would completely perish. Because of this, Lawler, despite his extreme sadness, carried on, doing his best to protect it from Sewell. As Sewell went for his wing, Lawler withdrew it, soaring higher into the sky. However, as he was about to shoot higher up in the air, a huge shadow enveloped him. Chapter 3740, Bring a Message. Although Lawler's reaction was fast, he was still nowhere near the Snake Spirit King's level. Before he could even think to dodge, the Snake Spirit King's tail had already hit him square on the chest. Boom! A huge hole appeared on the wine basin as Lawler's body was shattered into pieces and the set of golden coordinates hidden under his wing was exposed. Duran and Orville exchanged looks and quickly spread their wings to rush towards the golden coordinates. Their loyalty to their king was absolute and they would do everything to protect him. Bang! Bang! However, before the two bird masters could even get close, the Snake Spirit King had already lashed at them. Their hearts dropped to see the Snake Spirit King's long tail snatch the set of golden coordinates from Lawler. To their horror, he immediately put it into his mouth. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to destroy coordinates so easily and often needed a special space hammer to do so. However, the Snake Spirit King was no ordinary person. My kindest and most honest friend, he muttered with the golden coordinates in his mouth, goodbye. Just as he bit down, a black light suddenly flashed 10 feet away from his tail. As this black light reached him, the Snake Spirit King instantly stiffened in fear. Buzz! To his absolute horror, the black light continued to spread and move along his body. Treacherous beings did not have bones, neither did those at the Snake Spirit King's level, but this black light outlined his spine and skull clearly. We can't kill Xian, the Snake Spirit King suddenly declared. Sewell frowned in displeasure. Why not? Because he is still useful, the Snake Spirit King replied. He'll ruin our plans. Sewell pointed out. Just do as I say. The Snake Spirit King spat out the golden coordinates he had previously put in his mouth and threw it towards Duran. Filled with great inertia, the golden coordinates smashed Duran to the ground. The Snake Spirit King was very unwilling to give up and wanted to rush towards the golden coordinates. However, just as he was about to step forward, his body stiffened. He turned around and promptly left the battlefield. This left Sewell, Duran, Orville, and Lawler gaping in astonishment. They absolutely had no idea what just happened. My king! My king! Sewell shouted as he followed after the Snake Spirit King. Retreat! The Snake Spirit King's order was concise and demanded to be followed. Sewell, however, was still unwilling and shook his head. We can annihilate the whole bird spirit sect at this point. We can't stop now. We have to. However, before he could finish his words, the Snake Spirit King shot him a cold glare and silenced him. Do you dare disobey me? As the second most important figure in their sect, Sewell was someone who served the Snake Spirit King with the utmost loyalty and devotion. This was probably the most serious warning his superior gave him. Sewell opened his mouth as his gut clenched in fear. I dare not, he stammered in response before issuing the order to retreat. Almost all the treacherous beings on both sides had been killed. Even if Sewell did not give the order, the treacherous beings would still return after they died. Thus, the fierce battle in the Jade Pure Realm ended in such a strange, abrupt manner. Meanwhile, in the Divine Bell City of the Ruin Graveyard, the bell began to ring. This was a constant thing that happened once a month and everyone at the other Shore Realm buzzed with excitement. Soon, many other Shore Realm warriors began to ring the bell. Rocher was the most eye-catching one. The fact that he made it to the 32nd floor of the mysterious Yellow Tower was amazing and shocked the entire Ruin Graveyard. With this feat, he suddenly became everyone's hope to reach the top. After he managed to obtain the Manta stone, his cultivation speed increased exponentially and he was able to reach the 32nd floor quickly. He now set out to challenge the 33rd floor. Dong! After a long and melodious ring, he once again sat under the divine bell. Rocher closed his eyes and entered the mysterious yellow tower. He liked the tower's atmosphere very much and every time he entered, he felt a great sense of joy. Rocher had the impression that the owner was an incredibly optimistic person. However, when he entered, he sensed a subtle change in the air. It felt more dignified and solemn. Rocher couldn't help but take note of this change. Is it because of reach the top? He thought to himself. He was already on the 33rd floor and his eyes were already fixated on the lone sword. The atmosphere in the tower made him straighten his back more. Rocher's suspicions were correct. There was indeed a dignified presence within the tower. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord and his 4 disciples had gathered in the tower to watch him. Let Rocher get that sword, Dale said. Arthur nodded. I agree. Justin was quick to affirm, I also have no objections. It's all up to you, Master, Derek said. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord nodded. Back then, there was something wrong with the lone sword but Jeffrey was able to repair it. He was able to connect the sword to the 11th stair and make it so much more powerful. Are you all sure that you won't regret it if Rocher gets it? There was no hesitation at all as the 4 disciples shook their heads. They'd been trapped in this bubble for so long and their ambitions had long since evaporated into thin air. I won't regret it, Dale confirmed. We've deliberately trained Rocher and guided him to the 33rd floor precisely for him to obtain this sword. Jeffrey is still in the main world though and there is still no news of him. What if he tries to deliver a message through the sword? Arthur asked. To be fair, he had a point. However, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord had already prepared for that possibility and showed them a blood-red, jade pendant in his hand. His disciples' expressions changed when they saw the pendant on his palm. That's the Blood Soul Jade pendant, Dale muttered in a low voice. This pendant was formed by the bloodline of the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord and nurtured by him for many years. It was an avatar he created and the power it contained was comparable to his own. Summon a soul and I'll integrate your souls into the lone sword, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord told them. Why, Master? Justin asked. They absolutely had no idea why their master would make such an arrangement. A soul normally served as a backup plan during a huge crisis but they'd been safe in this bubble for so long now. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord's face became serious. Since Dale came back, I've been uneasy because our location has already been exposed. But the bubble can't be tracked. We've already changed our location and Arthur's already swallowed up the metal-devouring beast, Justin said, perfectly assured of their safety. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord could only sigh, I know but I've been so uneasy these days. Just leave your souls in case something happens. Though they did not know what their master was worried about, the 4 disciples still did as he asked and summoned their souls to drill into the jade pendant. Their master then reached out and hung the pendant onto the lone sword. The moment it was placed upon the sword, the jade pendant changed into blood threads that attached themselves onto the blade and seeped into the steel. Rocher couldn't see nor hear them. He also had no idea of what had just happened when the jade pendant integrated itself onto the lone sword. Compared to the last time he saw it, the lone sword's aura had changed and the energy that emanated from it was extremely astonishing. It was no longer the broken weapon that exuded no aura. It seemed like a proper, powerful weapon now. Rocher felt it but couldn't figure out how it happened. However, he remained very interested in the lone sword. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The big bell in the Divine Bell City began to tremble intermittently. Time was almost up. With a smile on his face, Rocher reached out and grasped the lone sword. Once the sound stopped, he would automatically leave the mysterious yellow tower. However, when he turned around, he found an old, sage-like man in front of him. His first instinct was to ask this man for identification. Who are? However, he changed his mind halfway. Are you the owner of the mysterious yellow tower? Rocher asked. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord nodded. Did you show up because I reached the top? He asked. Rocher wasn't that surprised at the owner's appearance. In fact, he figured that it was only a matter of time before this happened. However, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord shook his head. I want you to deliver a message to Mike. Rocher's eyes widened. Bring a message to Holy Mike. It wasn't easy for him to reach the 33rd floor yet when he got there, the owner of the tower suddenly appeared and asked him to deliver a message to Zen's father. What exactly was going on? Rocher shook his head. He shouldn't think about it too much right now. What's the message? He asked. A small butterfly appeared upon the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord's hand. He tossed it and Rocher watched it fly down and land on the 8th floor. Let Mike ring the bell and enter the tower to bear this butterfly, the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord instructed.